My name is Diane Morrison, and I'm 42 years old. They say you never really know someone until you see how they act when money's involved. Last week, I learned that lesson in the cruelest way possible, standing on my own doorstep, locked out of my home, 3 hours after burying my mother. My mother, Elizabeth, had been my anchor. When my father died when I was 12, she single-handedly raised me, working 2 jobs while getting her nursing degree. She taught me that strength wasn't about never falling, it was about always getting back up. Even as cancer ravaged her body these last 8 months, she faced it with grace that left her doctors speechless. Diane, she told me 2 weeks before she passed, I need you to promise me something. I held her frail hand, trying not to cry. Anything, Mom. Don't let anyone take advantage of your good heart. Not even family, especially not family. I thought she was talking about my deadbeat brother who'd shown up suddenly after years of absence, sniffing around for inheritance. I didn't realize she was warning me about the vultures I married into. My husband Robert and I had been married for 15 years. For most of that time, I'd been the primary breadwinner, working as a software engineer while he pursued his passion projects. A series of failed startups funded by my salary. His mother, Linda, had never approved of me. In her eyes, her precious baby boy had married beneath him. A woman should support her husband's dreams, she'd tell me at every family gathering, not overshadow him with her career. I'd bite my tongue, remembering that this woman hadn't worked a day in her life, living off her ex-husband's alimony and her son's occasional handouts, which really meant my handouts. The morning of my mother's funeral, Robert seemed distant. He'd been acting strange since Mom's diagnosis, constantly asking about her assets, her will, her house. I was too grief-stricken to pay attention to the red flags. I can't make it to the funeral, he announced as I was putting on my black dress. I stared at him in the mirror. What? Mom needs me to help her with something. It's urgent. More urgent than my mother's funeral? He wouldn't meet my eyes. You know how Mom is. When she needs something, she needs it now. I should have known then. Should have seen it. But grief makes you stupid, and I was drowning in it. Fine, I said, my voice hollow. I'll go bury my mother alone. The funeral was a blur. Friends from Mom's church, her colleagues from a hospital, neighbors who'd known us for decades, they all came. My brother showed up late, reeking of alcohol, and left early when he realized there would be no dramatic well reading like in the movies. Mom had been too smart for that. It was after the reception, after I thanked everyone and cleaned up the church hall, that I finally drove home. I was exhausted, empty, ready to collapse in my own bed and cry myself to sleep. But my key wouldn't fit in a lock. I tried again, thinking grief had made me clumsy. Nothing. The lock was different, shiny and new where the old one had been worn brass. Before I could process this, the door opened. Linda stood there in my entryway, wearing my mother's apron. The one with sunflowers that I'd bought Mom for her last birthday. Oh, Diane, she said with fake surprise. You're back already. Linda, what are you doing here? Why won't my key work? She smiled, the kind of smile a snake might give a mouse. This is my son's house now. I thought it was time we made that clear. I'm sorry, what? Robert appeared behind her, unable to meet my eyes. Mom's right, Diane. We need to talk about our living situation. Our living situation? I repeated, stunned. This is my house. We've lived here for 6 years. No, Linda corrected, stepping aside to let me see the locksmith's toolbox in my hallway. This is my son's house. A man's home should be in his name. Robert, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. What is she talking about? He shuffled his feet like a guilty child. Mom thinks, with your mother gone, it's time we restructured things. Put the house in my name. For tax purposes. Tax purposes. I tasted bile. I buried my mother 3 hours ago. Which is why this is the perfect time, Linda interjected. You're emotional, not thinking clearly. We're helping you by taking charge. I stood on my own doorstep, still in my funeral dress, staring at these people I call family. The morning's warning from my mother echoed in my mind. Don't let anyone take advantage of your good heart. You changed the locks while I was at my mother's funeral, I said slowly, letting the words sink in. You actually changed the locks on my house while I was burying my mother. Don't be dramatic. Linda waved her hand dismissively. We're having the deed transferred tomorrow. Robert's already signed the papers. We just need your signature, and then you can come in. I almost laughed. The audacity was breathtaking. "I see," I said calmly. "Well, let me get something from my car." They exchanged glances, probably thinking I was going to get my phone to call someone or break down crying. Instead, I walked to my car and pulled out a folder from my briefcase, the one I picked up from my mother's lawyer that morning before the funeral. I returned to the doorstep where they waited, Linda looking smug, Robert looking everywhere but at me. "Before we discuss any transfers," I said, opening the folder, "let me show you something interesting." I pulled out the deed to the house. "You see this? Notice the name on it." Linda snatched it from my hand. "It says, Elizabeth Morrison." My mother's name, I confirmed. This house was never in my name, and it certainly was never in Robert's. My mother bought it 5 years ago when she sold her old house. We've been living here rent-free because she wanted to help us while Robert pursued his dreams. The color drained from Linda's face. "That's impossible." "Here's her will," I continued, pulling out another document, dated 6 months ago, properly notarized. "She left the house to me. Just me, not to my spouse, not to my husband's family. To her daughter, Diane Morrison." "But," Robert started. "I'm not finished," I said, pulling out the final document. "This is an eviction notice. I had my mother's lawyer prepare it this morning when I told him about your strange questions regarding the house. He thought it was odd that you were so interested in property that wasn't yours." Linda laughed, but it sounded forced. "You can't evict us. Robert is your husband." "Actually, I can. You see, when you changed those locks, you established that you don't recognize my right to enter my own property. That's illegal eviction. But more importantly," I looked directly at Robert, "it shows that you no longer consider this a marital home. You've made it clear that you view this as your house, not ours. The law tends to frown on spouses who lock each other out." "Diane, please." Robert finally found his voice. "Let's go inside and talk about this." "With what key, Robert?" I asked. "You changed the locks, remember? I can't enter my own house." "This is ridiculous." Linda shrieked. "You can't throw us out. Where will we go?" "I believe you have a condo," I said evenly. "The one my salary helped pay the mortgage on for the last 10 years. That's a 1-bedroom. Then I suggest you start looking for somewhere bigger. You have 30 days. Robert grabbed my arm. "Diane, you're grieving. You're not thinking straight." I yanked my arm away. Don't you dare. I just buried the only person who truly loved me, and I came home to find you changed the locks while I was gone." "Who's not thinking straight?" "We were trying to help," Linda insisted. "By locking me out of my own home. By trying to steal my dead mother's house." My voice rose for the first time. "You want to help? Pack your things and get out. You need us to sign to get back in," Robert said desperately. I smiled then, and it must have been unsettling because they both stepped back. "Actually, I don't. This eviction notice allows me to have the locks changed back. The locksmith will be here in," I checked my watch, "about 20 minutes, along with a sheriff's deputy just to keep things civil." "You planned this?" Linda gasped. "No, Linda. My mother planned this. She knew exactly who you were. She saw how you treated me, how Robert let you walk all over our marriage. She made sure I'd be protected when she was gone." I looked at Robert. "She loved you like a son, you know, but she loved me more." The next 20 minutes were the longest of my life. Linda raged and threatened. Robert alternated between apologizing and accusing me of overreacting. I sat on my porch steps, and waited. When the locksmith arrived with the deputy, things moved quickly. The locks were changed back. I entered my house to find they'd already started rearranging things. My mother's photos were stacked in a corner. Linda's tacky paintings hung where Mom's watercolors had been. "You have 1 hour to pack essentials," the deputy informed them. "You can arrange to get the rest of your belongings later with supervision." Linda turned to me one last time. "You're making a huge mistake. No one will ever love you like my son does." "That's what I'm counting on," I replied. As they packed, I found more evidence of their plan. Papers on Robert's desk showed they'd already contacted a real estate agent about selling the house. They'd researched how to transfer deeds. They'd even looked up how long they'd have to wait after my mother's death to make their move. They decided the funeral was perfect timing. I'd be too distraught to fight back. They were wrong. Grief didn't make me weak. It made me see clearly for the first time in years. When they finally left, Linda clutching her garbage bags of clothes, Robert wheeling out a suitcase, I stood in my doorway, and watched them go. This isn't over, Robert said. I'll get a lawyer. That house is half mine. Get a lawyer, I said. Get 10 lawyers. The house was never marital property. It was my mother's, and now it's mine. Just like the hefty inheritance you were sniffing around for. Oh, didn't I mention? Mom left me everything. Her savings, her investments, her life insurance. All of it. His face went slack. How much? Wouldn't you like to know? I smiled. Here's a hint. Nurses who invest wisely for 40 years do quite well, especially when they live frugally and save everything for their only daughter. Diane. Goodbye, Robert. I closed the door, my door, and locked it with my new keys. That night, I sat in my mother's favorite chair, wrapped in her quilt, and cried. Not for my marriage that had died long before my mother did. I cried for her, for the woman who'd seen this coming and protected me even in death. I found a letter in her desk, dated just a week before she passed. My darling Diane, if you're reading this, then you've discovered what I've done. I hope you're not angry with me for keeping secrets. I wanted to tell you about the house, but I knew you'd insist on putting Robert's name on it too. You always were too generous. I've watched that woman poison your marriage for years. I've seen how she treats you, how he lets her. You deserve better, my love. You deserve someone who would stand by you at your mother's funeral, not change the locks while you grieve. The house is yours. The money is yours. Your life is yours. Don't let anyone, not Robert, not Linda, not guilt, take that from you. Be brave, my daughter. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is say no. All my love, Mom. The divorce papers were filed the next week. Robert tried everything, tears, threats, promises to change. His mother called daily, alternating between vicious voicemails and syrupy attempts at reconciliation. I changed my phone number. The house felt different without them. Lighter. Cleaner. I replaced Linda's gaudy decorations with my mother's things. I painted the walls colors Robert had always vetoed. I adopted 2 cats from the shelter, something he'd never allowed because his mother was allergic, she wasn't. 6 months later, I ran into Robert at the grocery store. He looked older, tired. He was buying the cheap beer he'd always mocked. Diane, he said, shifting uncomfortably, you look good. I am good, I said, and meant it. I heard you started your own consulting firm. I did. With my mother's inheritance as seed money, I'd finally taken the leap I'd always been too afraid to make. That's great, he said, but his heart wasn't in it. Listen, Mom's been staying with me. The condo's pretty crowded. I was wondering if maybe. No, I said simply. You don't even know what I was going to ask. Yes, I do, and the answer is no. He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. You've changed. No, Robert, I just stopped pretending I hadn't. I left him standing there in the cereal aisle, holding his cheap beer and his regrets. People ask me if I'm bitter about what happened. How can I not hate them for what they tried to do? But the truth is, I'm grateful. Grateful that they showed me who they really were. Grateful that my mother saw it first and protected me. Grateful that when they changed those locks, they freed me from a prison I didn't even know I was in. They thought grief would make me weak. They thought I'd crumble without them. They thought wrong. Grief didn't make me weak, it made me bold. Bold enough to stand up for myself. Bold enough to say no. Bold enough to choose my own happiness over their comfort. My mother gave me many gifts in her life, love, education, strength. But her final gift was the greatest, freedom. The locks have been changed again since then. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I gave keys to people who actually care about me, my best friend Sarah, my cousin Maria, the elderly neighbor who waters my plants when I travel for work. Real family, the kind that doesn't try to steal your house while you're at a funeral. Linda still drives by sometimes. I see her car slow down, see her crane her neck to look at the house she thought would be hers. I wave from the garden, my mother's garden that I've expanded, where her favorite roses still bloom. She never waves back. But I keep waving anyway, wearing my mother's gardening gloves, standing in front of my house, living my life. After all, the best revenge isn't anger or bitterness. It's happiness. It's success. It's thriving in the very place where someone tried to break you. And every time I put my key in my lock, my key, my lock, my home, I whisper a little thank you to the woman who saw this coming and made sure I'd win. Thanks, Mom. I miss you every day. But I hear you in the walls of this house, in the strength you built in me, in the voice that says no when people try to take what's mine. Your daughter isn't just surviving, she's thriving. And she always remembers to lock the door.
The day I transferred $92,000 to my sister was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, I spent it crying in a Holiday Inn, watching my honeymoon savings vanish with a single click. I'm Rose, and I've always been the responsible one. The sister who makes spreadsheets for Christmas presents and color codes her calendar. The one who spent 10 years saving for her dream wedding and honeymoon, only to give it all away because family comes first. At least, that's what I thought. Rose, please, you have to help me. Bianca's voice cracked over the phone at 3 a.m. He's going to kill me. I need to get out now. My heart stopped. Where are you? In the bathroom. Kyson's asleep. I've been planning this for weeks, but I need money to disappear. Please, Rosie, you're the only one I trust. I glanced at Zachary, my husband of exactly 48 hours, sleeping peacefully beside me. Our suitcases were already packed for the Maldives. How much do you need? The number she quoted made my stomach turn. But what's money compared to your sister's life? By sunrise, I was parked outside her house, engine running. Bianca slipped out with a single suitcase. Mascara streaked down her face. She looked smaller, somehow, fragile in her oversized hoodie. He'll be at work until 6, she whispered, climbing in. I have all the paperwork from the women's shelter. They helped me plan everything. At the bank, my hands shook as I initiated the wire transfer. The teller's eyes widened at the amount, but I kept my voice steady. It's for a house down payment. Bianca hugged me tight. You're saving my life, Rosie. I'll pay you back every penny, I swear. Later that afternoon, I sat with Zachary in our new hotel room, staring at the cancellation email from our honeymoon resort. We can go next year, he said, squeezing my hand. Your sister needs you now. I know. I managed a smile. Thank you for understanding. Just promise me she's really safe now. The shelter has a whole security system. She'll be in a protected location until the restraining order goes through. I repeated what Bianca had told me, each word a comfort. My phone buzzed. A message from Wendy. Check your Instagram. I opened the app, and the world tilted sideways. There, posted 3 minutes ago, was a photo of pristine turquoise water and white sand, the exact view I'd been dreaming of for years. Having the time of my life, read the caption. The champagne glass in the photo had a familiar logo, the same luxury resort we'd booked, the same infinity pool I'd been saving phone backgrounds of for months. That's impossible, I whispered. Another message from Wendy popped up. Swipe to the next photo, I did, and there was my sister, radiant in a bikini, throwing a peace sign at the camera. Behind her, unmistakable, was the suite number. Our suite number. Zach, I called out, my voice hollow. Come look at this. He appeared behind me, still toweling his hair. What's wrong? Remember how Bianca needed to escape her abusive husband? Yeah? I zoomed in on the photo, hands steady now. Too steady. Well, guess who just checked into our honeymoon suite? The towel dropped from his hands. In the corner of the photo, barely visible but clear enough, was a man's reflection in the sliding glass door. Kyson, very much alive and clearly not abusive, was raising his own champagne glass to the camera. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. Honey, don't be mad. Bianca just needed a break. You know how hard things have been for her. I stared at the message, then at the photos, then at my cancelled honeymoon confirmation. 10 years of saving, 48 hours of marriage, $92,000. What do you want to do? Zachary asked quietly. I closed Instagram and opened my banking app. The transfer was already complete, the money long gone, just like my trust in family. First, I said, pulling out my laptop, I'm going to call the resort and ask for their security footage. And then I thought about all the times I'd covered for Bianca, all the lies I'd believed because that's what sisters do. But this time was different. This time, she'd gone too far. Then, I said, opening a new document, I'm going to make sure she never does this to anyone else again. My phone lit up with another Instagram notification. Bianca had tagged me in a story. Best sister ever, living my best life thanks to you. I took a screenshot. Evidence number 1. The game was on. Look at this! I tilted my phone screen toward Wendy, who had rushed over with coffee and her laptop. The towels in the background have the resort's signature palm tree design, the same ones from their website. The ones you showed me 100 times while planning your honeymoon. Wendy took my phone, zooming in. Wait, is that the honeymoon package champagne setup? Complete with the fresh orchids I specifically requested. My voice remained eerily calm. They're using my exact reservation. Zachary paced behind us. I don't understand. How did they even know which resort we booked? Because I told her. I opened my email. Remember last month when Bianca asked to see our itinerary? She said she wanted to send us a surprise welcome package. Wendy's fingers flew across her laptop keyboard. She's been posting stories every hour. Look, breakfast at the underwater restaurant, couples massage at the spa. Stop. Zachary's voice was tight. Those were all our planned activities. My phone buzzed with another Instagram notification. Bianca had posted a boomerang of herself, jumping into the infinity pool, the sunset painting the sky behind her. The caption read, When your sister is literally an angel / blessed, new beginnings. That's it. Wendy grabbed her phone. I'm calling her out right now. Wait. I caught her arm. We need to be smart about this. Show me everything she's posted in the last 24 hours. We spent the next hour scrolling through Bianca's social media. Each post twisted the knife deeper. There she was, wearing a heart-shaped pendant I recognized from her wedding photos, the one Kyson had given her on their first anniversary, the same one she'd claimed he'd ripped off her neck during their last fight. Rose! Zachary called from across the room. Come look at this. He had pulled up Kyson's LinkedIn profile. Under current projects was a listing for a new business venture, dated 3 weeks ago, the same week Bianca had started talking about abuse. A luxury travel agency, I read aloud, specializing in honeymoon packages. Wendy whistled low. They're not just on vacation. They're researching for their new scam business. My phone rang. Mom's name flashed on the screen. Don't answer it, Wendy warned. I put it on speaker instead. Rose, honey. Mom's voice was placating. I know you're upset, but try to understand. Bianca and Kyson have been working so hard on their new business. They needed this market research trip. Market research? I interrupted. Is that what we're calling fraud now? Don't be dramatic. She'll pay you back once the business takes off. Did you know? The question came out barely above a whisper. When she called me crying about abuse, did you know it was a lie? Silence. Mom, She just needed the money, Rose. You know how she gets when she wants something, and you've always been so good with saving. I hung up. Wendy touched my arm. Rose, I need air. I walked to the hotel room balcony, Zachary following close behind. We should call the police, he said quietly. Not yet. I gripped the railing. First, I need to know exactly what we're dealing with. My phone pinged with a direct message from Bianca. The spa here is amazing. Thanks again, sis. I opened my camera roll and found a screenshot from 3 days ago. Bianca's tearful selfie in what she claimed was a domestic violence shelter. The timestamp matched perfectly with a geotagged photo of her and Kyson at the airport VIP lounge. Wendy, I called through the door, can you create a private Instagram story? One that only Bianca and Kyson can see? Already on it. She was typing furiously. What should it say? Nothing. Just post that photo from the shelter. Let's see how they react. Within minutes, Kyson's account had viewed the story, then quickly unfollowed me, but not before liking it, proof that they were watching my every move. Got you, I whispered. Zachary wrapped his arms around me. What's our next move? I pulled up my contact list and scrolled to a name I hadn't called in years. Kaysen Russell, attorney at law, my old college friend who specialized in financial fraud. Now, I said, pressing dial, we make them pay. The phone rang twice before Kaysen's familiar voice answered. Rose, long time no hear. Remember when you said I was too trusting? I watched another notification pop up, Bianca posting photos from what should have been my sunset dinner cruise. I need your help proving just how right you were. I'm listening. How much do you know about wire fraud? Behind me, Wendy gasped. On her screen was a new discovery, a GoFundMe page set up by Kyson, claiming he needed money for cancer treatment. The date? 1 week before Bianca's midnight call about abuse. This wasn't just about my honeymoon anymore. This was about stopping them before they could hurt anyone else. Send me everything you have, Kaysen said. And Rose, don't delete anything. Every post, every message, it's all evidence now. I looked at the heart-shaped pendant glinting in Bianca's latest photo. Trust me, I said. I'm keeping receipts. The evidence spread across my dining room table like a twisted scrapbook. Bank statements, screenshots, timestamps, each piece adding to a picture I wished I'd seen sooner. Look at this, Wendy said, spinning her laptop toward me. The GoFundMe page has raised nearly $30,000. Most of the donors are elderly women from Kyson's church group. I added it to our growing pile of documentation. How did you find that? One of the donors commented about meeting him at Sunday service. I checked the church's Facebook page. They've been promoting his cancer battle for weeks. My phone buzzed. Another Instagram story from Bianca. Last day in paradise. But don't worry. Booking appointments now for your dream vacation. DM for details. They're not even trying to hide it anymore, Zachary muttered, looking over my shoulder. I grabbed my keys. I need to see Mom. The drive to my childhood home felt longer than usual. Mom was waiting on the porch, arms crossed, looking smaller than I remembered. Before you start, she said as I approached, remember that family is everything. Funny. That's exactly what Bianca said when she played me those abuse confession voicemails. Mom's face tightened. She was upset. Those voicemails, I interrupted, pulling out my phone. Did they sound something like this? I pressed play on a podcast episode I'd found last night. a domestic violence survivor sharing her story. The exact same words Bianca had played for me, claiming they were recordings of Kyson. Mom sat heavily on the porch swing. "Rose, did you know?" She wouldn't meet my eyes. She showed me the shelter paperwork. Fake. The shelter doesn't even exist. I pulled out the documents. "See this letterhead? It's from a template website. Wendy found it in 10 minutes. But the bruises, makeup. She's been doing theater since high school, remember? Remember when she faked mono to get out of finals?" Mom's hands trembled. "She said she needed a fresh start. She needed my honeymoon fund, and you helped her take it." "I didn't know about the honeymoon part," Mom whispered. "She just said you had savings." My phone chimed. A text from Kaysen. "Found something. Come to the office. Now. I have to go," I told Mom. "But first, those voice messages she played you. Did you record them?" "Yes. I wanted evidence, in case we needed it for court. Send them to me. All of them." 20 minutes later, I sat in Kaysen's office, watching him compare audio files. "It's not just the podcast," he said, adjusting his headphones. "They've spliced together clips from multiple sources. Your sister's quite the audio editor. She majored in media studies. Well, she's about to learn about media law." He turned his monitor toward me. "But that's not why I called you here. Look at this." On the screen was a loan application. My name was listed as co-signer. "When was this filed?" 2 days ago. Carson leaned back. "They're trying to secure a business loan using your credit. Probably figured you wouldn't notice with all the honeymoon drama." My hands clenched. "Can they do that?" "Not legally, but they've got your social security number, birth date, probably even copies of your ID." "Because I gave them to Bianca for the wire transfer," I finished. "Perfect." My phone lit up with a notification. Kaizen had accidentally liked my private story, the one showing their exact location every time they posted. Wendy's message followed immediately. "Got the timestamp screenshot. They're definitely monitoring your account." I turned to Kaysen. "How do we stop them? We've got wire fraud, identity theft, charity fraud with the GoFundMe." He started typing. "Plus, impersonating a domestic violence organization, which is a separate federal offense." "I don't want them just stopped," I said quietly. "I want them exposed." Kaysen's fingers paused over the keyboard. "That could get messy. Family drama usually does. They're not family anymore." I pulled up Bianca's latest post, a promotional video for their new travel agency, filmed in my honeymoon suite. "They're criminals who happen to share my parents." "All right." He reached for his phone. "I know a detective who specializes in financial crimes. But Rose—" He caught my eye. "Once we start this, there's no going back. Your sister could face serious time." I thought about the elderly church ladies donating their pension money, about real abuse victims whose stories Bianca had stolen, about my own shaking hands as I'd transferred my savings, thinking I was saving her life. "Good," I said, pulling out my evidence folder, "because neither can they." My phone buzzed one last time, a message from Bianca. "Hey sis, just booked our first clients. Want to celebrate over dinner? My treat." I showed it to Carson. "How long until we can file charges?" He smiled grimly. "Give me 48 hours. "Perfect." I texted back. "Can't wait. Send me the details." Evidence folder, Exhibit 23, one more confession, served with a side of champagne. "Let's review the timeline," Kaysen said, pacing his office. 3 a.m. call claiming domestic violence. Wire transfer at 9 a.m. By 4 p.m. they're boarding a first-class flight to the Maldives. I nodded, watching him pin documents to a massive corkboard. Using my credit card points. She said she needed them to book a safe house. And the domestic violence hotline number she gave you? Traced to a burner phone registered to Kyson's shell company. Wendy pulled up the records on her tablet. They even recorded fake hold music. My stomach turned. The level of planning was staggering. What gets me, Zachary said from the corner, is how they're still posting about it, like they're proud. He was right. That morning, Bianca had launched their travel agency's website. The tagline? "Let us make your dreams come true. We know all the best spots." Kaysen pinned their business registration papers next to the fake shelter documents. Classic confidence scheme. Use one person's money to convince others to invest. Your honeymoon fund is just their startup capital. But why fake the abuse story? I asked. Why not just ask for a loan? Because you wouldn't have given it. Wendy's voice was gentle. They needed something you couldn't refuse. My phone rang. Bianca's face lit up the screen. Answer it, Kaysen instructed, hitting record on his desktop. Keep her talking. I took a deep breath and pressed accept. Hey, sis. Rosie! Her voice bubbled through the speaker. Did you see our website? We've already got 5 bookings. Impressive. Using my honeymoon suite for the promotional photos was a nice touch. A pause. Then, oh, don't be like that. We're going to pay you back double once the business takes off. You're basically an investor. Like those church ladies who donated to Kyson's cancer fund? The line went quiet. Then I heard Kyson's voice in the background. Hang up. Too late, I said. The GoFundMe page has been reported, and I've got copies of everything. Bianca's laugh turned sharp. Copies of what? Me borrowing money from my loving sister? That's not a crime. No, but wire fraud is. So is impersonating a domestic violence organization. Want me to keep going? You wouldn't. Her voice dropped. We're family. Family doesn't steal honeymoons. Steal? She was giggling now. Please, you're just jealous because we're actually doing something with the money instead of wasting it on some basic beach vacation. I heard Kyson laugh in the background. You know what's interesting? I kept my voice level. The resort's security cameras. They catch everything, including you checking in using my reservation confirmation. The giggling stopped. But, hey, at least you got great content for your website. Though you might want to take down that video where Kyson explains how to create fake business loans. You know, the one where he mentions forging my signature? You bitch! The line went dead. Kaysen stopped the recording. Well, that was better than we hoped. Clear admission of intent to defraud. Plus, confirmation they used your reservation, Wendy added, and that comment about paying you back double implies they never intended a straight loan. My hands were shaking. Zachary came over and wrapped his arms around me. You did great, he whispered. She didn't even deny it, I said. Any of it. She just laughed, because she's never faced consequences, Kaysen said, adding the call recording to our evidence file. But that changes now. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Bianca just called crying. Said you're trying to ruin her life. Please stop this madness. Don't respond, Kaysen warned. Everything goes through me now. We file first thing tomorrow. What happens then? Best case? They're ordered to repay everything, plus damages. Worst case for them? Federal charges for wire fraud and charity scamming. Prison? My voice cracked. They stole from elderly church members, Rose. Used domestic violence as a cover story. The judge won't be sympathetic. Zachary squeezed my shoulder. Having second thoughts? I thought about Bianca's laugh when I mentioned the evidence, about the real abuse victims whose stories she'd stolen, about the trust she'd weaponized. No, I said, but not for revenge. This needs to stop before they hurt anyone else. My phone lit up with Instagram notifications. Bianca was mass deleting posts, but Wendy had already archived everything. Smart girl, Kaysen said, but too late. The internet never forgets. A final text came through from Bianca. Hope you're happy. You've just destroyed your only sister's future. I showed it to Kaysen. Add it to the evidence file? He nodded. Along with this, he handed me a paper. Found 3 more loan applications in your name, all submitted this week. I stared at the documents, remembering every time I'd covered for her lies, every excuse I'd made, every dollar I'd given. File the charges, I said. All of them. Carson picked up his phone. You sure? Once this starts? I'm sure. I watched Wendy updating our evidence spreadsheet. Some things are unforgivable. The next notification was from the court system. Case number assigned. Game over, sis. The process server sent me a video of Bianca being served the court summons. She was at a coffee shop, laptop open to their travel agency website, likely scamming another victim. Her face dropped as she read the first page. Then she started screaming. Your sister's quite the actress, the server texted afterward. Too bad she performed for my body cam. Within hours, Bianca's social media went dark. Their business website disappeared. The only trace left was a single Instagram story, a black screen with white text. False accusations destroy families. The comments flooded in immediately. Stay strong, girl. Family can be so toxic. We believe you. I showed the post to Kaysen during our morning meeting. Classic Darvo, he said. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. She's trying to control the narrative. My phone rang. Mom, you have to stop this, she pleaded before I could speak. Bianca's hysterical. She says you're trying to send her to prison. Did she mention the fake cancer fund or forging my signature? She made some mistakes. Mistakes? I cut her off. She stole $92,000 by pretending her husband was abusing her. That's not a mistake, Mom. That's a felony. Family doesn't do this to family. Really? Because family doesn't steal under the guise of abuse either. The line went quiet. Then, I found your old diary, from when you were 16. My stomach dropped. I knew exactly what she meant. Remember when Bianca took your college fund? Mom continued. You forgave her then. I was a child. She convinced me she needed it for rehab. And you covered for her. Told everyone you decided to go to community college instead. That's different. Is it? You've always protected her. Why stop now? I thought about that diary entry, how I'd written about working 3 jobs senior year to make up for the stolen money, how I'd convinced myself it was worth it because Bianca needed help. Because this time, I said quietly, she didn't just steal from me. She stole from people who really needed help, real abuse victims, real cancer patients. The court date will ruin her life. She ruined her own life, Mom. I'm just making sure she can't ruin anyone else's. After hanging up, I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel. Wendy's text lit up my phone. You okay? Need backup? I'm fine, I replied. Just remembering things. Don't let them guilt you. Check your email. Found something interesting. I opened my inbox. Wendy had forwarded a series of posts from a travel planning forum. Multiple complaints about a new luxury travel agency. Cancelled bookings, missing deposits. They'd already started scamming other people. Back at Kaysen's office, the evidence wall had grown. Bank statements showed Bianca and Kaysen had spent nearly half my money in 10 days. The good news, Kaysen said, is the judge granted our emergency injunction. Their accounts are frozen. And the bad news? Your mother called me 3 times, says she's got evidence you're mentally unstable and making false accusations. I laughed hollowly. Let me guess. My teenage diary. Among other things. Don't worry, it's all inadmissible. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Back off or everyone learns what really happened senior year. Kay. I showed it to Kaysen. Kaysen's getting desperate, he said. Good. Desperate people make mistakes. As if on cue, Wendy burst in. You need to see this! She pulled up a live stream. Bianca, tears streaming, was telling her followers about her abusive family and their false accusations. I just wanted to help people find their dream vacations, she sobbed. But my own sister. She's trying to destroy me because she's jealous of my success. The comments section filled with support and heart emojis. She's raising money for her legal defense, Wendy said. Another GoFundMe. I watched my sister cry on screen, remembering all the times I'd seen this performance. The college fund, the rehab scam, the fake pregnancy scare. Always tears, always someone else to blame. Send it all to the judge, I told Kaysen. Every comment, every donation, show them this isn't about family drama, it's about a career con artist. Already done. He handed me a new document. Preliminary hearings tomorrow. Ready to tell your story? I thought about my teenage diary, about working those 3 jobs, about believing every tear, every promise, every lie. More than ready, I said. It's time everyone knew the truth. My phone lit up one last time. Bianca had posted again. Blood is thicker than water, but some people forget that blood can also drown you. I showed it to Kaysen. Add it to the evidence file? He nodded grimly. Your sister really doesn't know when to stop, does she? No, I said, watching the donation counter on her live stream tick up. But I do. The courthouse hallway felt colder than it should have in August. Bianca and Kaysen sat across from us, her in a conservative blue dress that screamed, innocent victim, him in a suit that still had the price tag shadow on the sleeve. It was just a misunderstanding, Kaysen announced as soon as the deposition began. Rose offered to help with our business venture. We never forced her to transfer anything. Their lawyer, a tired-looking man with a crooked tie, nodded along. Kaysen smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. Let's review the evidence, shall we? He played the 3 a.m. phone call. Bianca's sobs echoed through the conference room. He's going to kill me! That was taken out of context, Bianca interrupted. I was emotional about our business plans. And this context? Kaysen pulled up the fake domestic violence shelter documentation. The letterhead you created using a template website? The intake forms you forged? We never specifically said, play the voicemail, I said quietly. Kaysen pressed play. Bianca's voice filled the room again. The shelter counselor says I need to get away immediately. Please, Rosie, you're my only hope. Now, Kaysen continued, let's compare that to this domestic violence survivor podcast episode 47, timestamp 23.15. The same words played again, but in a different voice. The actual survivor's voice. Bianca's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. That's circumstantial, Kyson argued. You can't prove your Instagram posts from the Maldives. Kaysen cut in. Time-stamped exactly 6 hours after claiming to be in a domestic violence shelter. The resort's security footage showing you checking in using Ms. Mason's reservation details. The champagne toast you posted with the caption, "Finally free," while wearing the same heart pendant from your wedding photos. Bianca's composure cracked. It was just marketing. For the business funded by elderly church members who thought they were donating to cancer treatment. I asked. The room went silent. We can explain. Kyson started. Please do, Kaysen said. Explain the fake GoFundMe, the forged loan applications, the new legal defense fund that's collecting donations based on false claims of family persecution. Bianca burst into tears. Perfect, camera-ready tears that didn't smudge her mascara. Rose, she pleaded, you're my sister. We can work this out privately. Like we worked out my stolen college fund privately? Her eyes narrowed. You promised never to mention that. And you promised to pay back every penny. How'd that work out? The judge, who had been silently observing, finally spoke. I've seen enough. However, I'm willing to offer a settlement option before proceeding with criminal charges. Bianca perked up. Full repayment of all funds, the judge continued, plus damages, immediate cessation of all fraudulent fundraising activities, and mandatory financial monitoring for 5 years. Or? Kyson asked. Or we continue with federal prosecution for wire fraud, charity fraud, and identity theft. Minimum sentence is 3 years. Bianca's lawyer leaned over to whisper something. She shoved him away. This is ridiculous, she snapped. It was a family loan. Rose is just jealous because we used the money better than she would have. Better? I pulled out my phone. Let's talk about how you used it. I played a video compilation Wendy had made. Bianca and Kyson's luxury posts contrasted with their tearful pleas for donations. The fake cancer updates next to spa day photos. The domestic violence shelter claims time-stamped alongside first-class flight check-ins. This isn't about jealousy, I said. It's about justice. Not just for me, but for everyone you've scammed. We didn't, Kyson began. Save it, Carson interrupted. The FBI is already investigating the cancer fund. Your choice is simple. Settle now or face federal charges. Bianca stood up suddenly. You know what? Do your worst. Nobody will believe you anyway. I've already told everyone how you're trying to destroy me out of spite. Actually, the judge said, your social media campaign of harassment is being added to the evidence file, along with the witness statements from your previous fraud victims. Previous? Kyson's face went pale. Did you think the college fund was the first time? I asked him. Ask her about the rehab scam, or the fake pregnancy fundraiser in 2019. Bianca's perfect tears turned to rage. You promised never to tell, and you promised not to steal from me again. Guess we're both breaking promises today. The judge cleared his throat. Given the defendant's attitude and apparent history of fraud, I'm denying the settlement option. Criminal charges will proceed. You can't do this, Bianca whispered. You did this, I corrected her. Every lie, every scam, every stolen dollar led to this moment. As the bailiff approached with paperwork, Bianca locked eyes with me. I'll never forgive you for this. Funny, I said, gathering my evidence files. That's exactly what your last victim said to you. The headlines started appearing within hours. Sister scammers face federal charges in honeymoon heist. Karma, it seemed, had finally caught up. The verdict came down on a Tuesday morning. I sat in the courtroom, watching Bianca's perfectly curated facade finally crack as the judge spoke. On the charges of wire fraud, identity theft, and charitable organization fraud, this court finds the defendants guilty. Kyson slumped in his chair. Bianca's hands trembled. The defendants will repay all stolen funds, including the $92,000 fraudulently obtained from Rose Mason. Additionally, the court orders full restitution to all GoFundMe donors, with interest. I heard Mom's sharp intake of breath from the back row. Furthermore, the judge continued, given the exploitation of domestic violence survivors' stories for personal gain, this court orders both defendants to complete 2,000 hours of community service at legitimate domestic violence shelters. Bianca's lawyer started to object. I'm not finished. The judge cut him off. The defendants will also face 3 years of supervised release, during which they are prohibited from operating any business entities or fundraising campaigns. The gavel struck, final and heavy. Wendy appeared beside me, holding a bouquet of roses. Thought you deserved flowers on your honeymoon, even if it's a little late. Tears pricked my eyes as I took them. Real tears, not the camera-ready kind. Outside the courthouse, reporters clustered with microphones and cameras. Bianca tried one last performance. This is a family tragedy, she announced, dabbing at dry eyes. My sister's jealousy has torn us apart. Your Honor, Kaysen called out. The judge paused on the steps. The defendant appears to be violating the order against false narratives. Bianca's mouth snapped shut. Ms. Knight, the judge warned, one more false statement and you'll find yourself in contempt. Clear? She nodded stiffly. Later that afternoon, I watched from my office window as Bianca and Kyson moved boxes out of their luxury apartment, the one they'd leased using my stolen money. A news van captured every moment. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. I found your old honeymoon suitcase in the attic. Still packed. Still waiting. I stared at the message, remembering the night I'd hidden that suitcase away, too heartbroken to unpack it. You should book it, Zachary said, reading over my shoulder. Book what? The honeymoon. The same suite, the same everything. I shook my head. It's been months. So? Wendy chimed in from her desk. The money's being returned, the suite's available, and this time... She grinned. No family emergencies allowed. My phone lit up again. A news alert. Travel agency scammers ordered to repay victims. Full story at 6. Below, it was a message from the domestic violence shelter, a real one this time. They wanted to interview me about helping expose fraud that exploited survivors. Book it, I told Zachary. He raised an eyebrow. You sure? I pulled up the resort's website. The same infinity pool photo that had revealed Bianca's betrayal now felt like a victory flag. Absolutely sure. That evening, as moving trucks carted away Bianca's designer furniture, I posted my first social media update in months. Just a photo of my original honeymoon suitcase, finally unpacked after 3 months, with the caption, "Some dreams are worth the wait." Wendy commented first. This time with 100% less fraud. The likes poured in, along with messages from other fraud victims thanking me for speaking up. One comment caught my eye. You showed us that being soft doesn't mean being weak. My phone rang. the resort's booking agent. Ms. Mason, I have your original suite available next month. Same honeymoon package, same everything. Should I proceed with the reservation? I looked at Zachary, who nodded enthusiastically. Yes, I said. But one change. I'd like to add a donation to the resort's domestic violence survivor program. Of course, and... The agent paused. We've added extra security measures since your last booking. No one can access your reservation without triple verification. I thought about Bianca's Instagram posts from my stolen suite. Perfect. That night, I received one final text from Mom. Found something else in the attic. Your graduation speech, the one about forgiveness being strength. I replied, It is strength. So is justice. Then I blocked her number. Wendy sent me the latest news update. Bianca and Kyson's luxury items were being auctioned to repay their victims. The heart-shaped pendant that had helped expose their lies was listed first. Karma signs the biggest checks, Wendy messaged. I looked at my honeymoon suitcase, now repacked with fresh hope instead of stolen dreams. On top sat the roses Wendy had given me, real flowers for a real victory. My phone buzzed one last time, the domestic violence shelter again. Your story helped us identify 3 other social media scams exploiting survivors. Thank you for speaking up. I smiled, thinking of Bianca's favorite saying. Blood is thicker than water. She was right, but justice, it turns out, is thicker than both. The Maldivian sunset painted the ocean in shades of gold and pink as I sat at the infinity pool's edge, the same spot where Bianca had once posed with my stolen dreams. But this time, the view was rightfully mine. Mail call. Wendy's voice came through my phone's speaker. Want me to read them? Go ahead. I adjusted my sunglasses, watching Zachary swim lazy laps below. First up, check for $92,000 plus interest from the court trustee, already deposited. Next, letter from the domestic violence shelter. They're starting a fraud prevention program in your name. I smiled. What else? 3 more victim impact statements for the sentencing hearing. Oh, and... She paused. A letter from Bianca. My hand tightened on the phone. What does it say? The usual manipulation. Dear sister, I hope you're happy now that you've destroyed my life. Mom's devastated. Kyson's family won't speak to us, all because you couldn't handle my success. Delete it. Already did, but there's something else. Remember that Reddit post I made about your story? How could I forget? Wendy had detailed everything, from the midnight call to the court verdict. It had gone viral within hours. It's being adapted into a documentary. They want to interview you about social media fraud and family exploitation. Below, Zachary pulled himself out of the pool. Say yes, he called out, hearing the conversation. Help other people spot the signs you missed. I thought about all the red flags I'd ignored, the patterns I'd excused, the lies I'd absorbed because family is everything. Tell them I'll do it, I said. But first, I need to write something. I opened my laptop, creating a new document. The cursor blinked expectantly. Dear Bianca, I typed, I'm sitting in the honeymoon suite you stole, watching the same sunset you photographed with stolen money. But I'm not writing to gloat. Zachary read over my shoulder as I continued. I'm writing to thank you. Thank you for showing me that my softness wasn't weakness. It was the strength you exploited. Thank you for teaching me that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about truth and respect. Most of all, thank you for failing to destroy me. Your betrayal didn't break me. It set me free. Are you going to send it? Zachary asked. No. I saved the document. Some letters are meant to heal the writer, not the recipient. My phone buzzed. A news alert. Social media scammer sentenced. How one woman's stolen honeymoon exposed a network of fraud. Wendy's voice came through again. The shelter called. 3 more families came forward after reading your story. You helped them spot the warning signs before losing everything. I looked out at the horizon, remembering Bianca's last words in court. You'll regret choosing strangers over family. She was wrong. I'd chosen truth over lies, justice over manipulation, strength over surrender. One more thing, Wendy said. Your mom's trying to launch a GoFundMe for Bianca's legal rehabilitation. Want me to report it? Already did, I replied, and sent the evidence to her parole officer. Zachary handed me a glass of champagne, the real honeymoon package I'd waited for. 2 new beginnings. 2 earned endings, I corrected. My phone lit up with another message, this time from Kaysen. Judge denied their appeal. The restitution stands. You won. But it wasn't about winning. It was about breaking cycles, exposing truth, protecting others. Ready for dinner? Zachary asked. Same restaurant they posed in. I stood up, adjusting my dress. Let's make better memories. As we walked to the restaurant, my phone showed one last notification. A comment on Wendy's Reddit post. Thank you for sharing this story. I almost fell for my sister's cancer scam. You saved my family's savings. I thought about the diary Mom had tried to use against me, the one where I'd written about forgiveness being strength. I hadn't been wrong, but I'd learned that accountability is stronger than blind forgiveness, and truth is stronger than family ties. At dinner, sitting at the same table where Bianca had once celebrated her theft, Zachary raised his glass. To my wife, who taught me that the softest hearts often have the strongest spines. I clinked my glass against his, watching the sunset paint new colors across the water. The same view, but through clearer eyes. Later that night, I added one final line to my unsent letter. P.S. Never underestimate the one who always forgives. We remember everything, and sometimes remembering is the greatest act of self-love. Then I closed my laptop, turned off my phone, and let the sound of honest waves wash away the last echoes of stolen dreams. Some people collect family photos, others collect receipts. But me? I collected my power back, one truth at a time, and that was worth every penny. The call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. I know because I was staring at my phone screen, watching the numbers glow in the dark when it started buzzing like an angry wasp. Layla. Oh God, Layla, you need to get here now. My name is Layla, and I've been the family emergency contact for as long as I can remember. Not because I'm the oldest. That's Reagan. Not because I'm the most successful. That would be Tyron, if you count charm as success. I'm the emergency contact because I'm the only one who actually answers the phone. Stacy? What's wrong? Mom's best friend was crying so hard I could barely make out the words. Your mother collapsed. We're at St. Mary's. The doctors. They said something about her heart. Surgery. Tonight. The world tilted. I was already pulling on jeans, grabbing my keys. How bad? Bad, honey. Real bad. I made it to the hospital in 12 minutes. Should have taken 20, but red lights don't matter when your mother might be dying. Stacy was pacing the waiting room, mascara streaked down her cheeks like war paint. Where is she? Surgery. Been in there 2 hours already. Stacy grabbed my hands. Layla, they need a decision on the procedure. It's experimental, but it's her only shot. Insurance won't cover it all. How much? 47,000. I didn't hesitate. Do it. Honey, that's... I said do it. I was already pulling out my phone, calling my bank's emergency line. My entire savings account. Gone. Just like that. But what else was I supposed to do? Let her die while we haggled over money? The surgery took 6 more hours. I called Reagan 4 times, Tyron 3. Reagan's phone went straight to voicemail, probably turned off for some yoga retreat or wine tasting. Tyron's girlfriend Kendra finally answered around noon. Oh, hey, Layla. Tyron's at a client lunch. Is everything okay? Mom's in emergency surgery. Oh no, is it serious? I wanted to scream. Instead I said, just have him call me. They showed up around 4 p.m. when Mom was already in recovery. Reagan swept in wearing designer sunglasses and a concerned expression that looked practiced in the mirror. How is she? We came as soon as we could. Tyron nodded along, checking his phone. Traffic was insane. You know how it is. She's stable. The surgery went well, but recovery will take months. Reagan pulled me aside, lowering her voice like she was sharing state secrets. Layla, you look exhausted. Maybe you should go home. Get some rest. We can handle things from here. Handle what? You just got here. I just think you might be overreacting a little. Mom's tough. She'll be fine. Overreacting. I'd been here for 14 hours, signed away my life savings, and held Mom's hand while she whispered about being scared to die. But sure, I was overreacting. Someone needs to stay with her tonight. The nurses can... I'm staying. Reagan exchanged a look with Tyron, the kind of look that said, there she goes again, being dramatic. They left around 6, promising to come back tomorrow. I pulled a chair next to Mom's bed and watched her breathe. The machines beeped steadily, a mechanical lullaby that should have been comforting, but just reminded me how close we'd come to losing her. Around midnight, she stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. Layla. I'm here, Mom. What happened? I explained everything gently. The collapse, the surgery, the recovery ahead. She squeezed my hand with surprising strength. You saved my life. The doctors saved your life. I just made sure they could. She was drifting back to sleep when my phone buzzed. A text message. I almost ignored it, but the preview made my blood freeze. It was from Tyron to Reagan. I could see it because we were all in a family group chat, but this message wasn't meant for the group. He'd sent it to the wrong thread. Reagan, you were right. Layla's totally monopolizing this whole thing. Classic attention-seeking behavior. Mom probably just had heartburn and Layla turned it into a medical emergency. We should probably stage an intervention about her drama addiction, LOL. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. My mother was lying in a hospital bed, tubes snaking from her arms, because her heart had literally stopped working. I'd emptied my bank account to save her life, and my siblings thought I was being dramatic. I screenshotted the message before Tyron realized his mistake and deleted it. Some mistakes you can't take back. Some words, once spoken, change everything. I was about to learn just how true that was. 3 weeks later, I was living at Mom's house. Not by choice, by necessity. She couldn't lift her arms above her shoulders, couldn't remember to take her medications, couldn't even shower without help. The woman who raised 3 kids was suddenly helpless as a newborn. I'd taken unpaid leave from my non-profit job. My boss wasn't thrilled, but what choice did I have? Reagan lived 40 minutes away and had work commitments. Tyron was launching some new business venture that required his full attention. So it was me. Always me. Layla, can you help me with this pill organizer? Mom called from the kitchen. I found her staring at 7 bottles of medication like they were written in hieroglyphics. Heart pills, blood thinners, pain management, anti-nausea. The pharmacy had given us a chart, but Mom's hands shook too much to open the child-proof caps. Here, let me. I sorted the pills into the weekly dispenser, same routine we'd done every morning for 3 weeks. Remember, the blue ones are twice a day. I know, honey. I'm not senile, but she was forgetting things. Little things at first, where she put her reading glasses, whether she'd eaten lunch. Then, bigger things. Yesterday, she'd asked me 3 times when Reagan was coming to visit. Reagan hadn't been by since the hospital. My phone buzzed. A text from Reagan. Family dinner Sunday at my place, 2 p.m. Bring Mom if she's feeling up to it. Reagan's invited us for dinner Sunday. Mom's face lit up. Oh, how wonderful! I haven't seen the kids in so long. The kids. Reagan was 34, Tyron was 30, but in Mom's mind, they were still her babies who could do no wrong. Sunday came. I helped Mom get dressed, did her hair, made sure she had her medications. She was excited, chattering about seeing everyone. I drove us to Reagan's pristine suburban house, the one she'd bought with her marketing executive salary. Reagan answered the door in a flowing sundress, looking like she'd stepped out of a lifestyle magazine. Mom, you look wonderful. She hugged Mom carefully, like she might break. Layla, thanks for bringing her. Tyron was already there with Kendra, his girlfriend of 2 years. Kendra gave me a genuine smile and a hug. She was one of the few people in this family who seemed to actually like me. How are you holding up? She whispered. I'm managing. Dinner was perfectly orchestrated. Reagan had made Mom's favorite, pot roast with all the fixings. The table was set with the good china. Everything looked normal, happy even. But I noticed things. How Reagan directed all her conversation toward Mom, barely acknowledging me. How Tyron kept checking his phone. How they asked Mom about her recovery, but never asked me about the daily reality of caring for her. So, Mom, Reagan said, cutting her meat into precise pieces, we've been thinking about your long-term care situation. What do you mean? Mom asked. Well, you can't live alone anymore, and Layla can't put her whole life on hold indefinitely. I set down my fork. Excuse me? I'm just saying, we need to think practically about what's best for everyone. What's best for everyone is Mom getting the care she needs. Of course, but there are professional options, assisted living facilities with trained staff. Mom looked confused, glancing between us. I don't want to go to a home. It's not a home, Mom. It's independent living with support services. I want to stay in my house. Reagan's smile never wavered. We all want that, but we have to be realistic about what's sustainable. Sustainable for who? I asked. For you, Layla. You're burning yourself out. It's not healthy. Tyron finally looked up from his phone. Reagan's right. You've been pretty intense about this whole thing. There was that word again. Intense. Someone has to be intense. Someone has to actually take care of her. We're all taking care of her, Reagan said smoothly. Just in different ways. What ways? When was the last time either of you even called her? Layla, Mom said quietly. Don't start a fight. I'm not starting anything. I'm just asking when they last. You're being dramatic again, Tyron said. We're here now, aren't we? Dramatic, intense, overreacting. They're favorite words for me. The rest of dinner passed in strained politeness. Reagan talked about work. Tyron shared stories about his new business. Mom smiled and nodded, happy to have her whole family together. As we were leaving, Reagan pulled me aside. Layla, I know this is hard, but you need to think about your own future too. My future is fine. Is it? You've used up all your savings, taken unpaid leave. What happens when Mom needs more care than you can provide? We'll figure it out. Will we? Or will you just expect us to pick up the pieces when you finally burn out? I stared at her. Pick up the pieces? You haven't picked up anything. That's not fair, isn't it? She sighed like I was a difficult child. Just think about what I said, okay? I drove Mom home in silence. She dozed in the passenger seat, exhausted from the social effort. When we got to her house, I helped her inside and settled her in her recliner. That was nice, she said. It's good when we're all together. Yeah, really nice. My phone buzzed as I was getting Mom's evening medications ready. A text from Tyron to Reagan. Again, sent to the wrong thread. She's totally lost it. Did you see how defensive she got? We need to do something before she completely takes over Mom's life. I screenshotted that one too. Some patterns, once you see them, you can't unsee. 2 days later, I was sitting in Beau's law office, staring at a stack of papers I'd forgotten I even had. My ex-boyfriend turned lawyer had always been good at keeping records, even when we were dating, especially the important ones. You're sure these are legally binding? I asked. Beau adjusted his glasses and flipped through the documents. Completely. Medical power of attorney, financial guardianship, healthcare proxy, all signed, witnessed, and notarized the night of her surgery. I filed them with the hospital and the county clerk the next morning. But Reagan said she has power of attorney. She might have something, but it doesn't override this. These were signed first, when your mother was of sound mind, before any medical procedures. Whatever Reagan has would be secondary at best. I remembered that night clearly now. Mom had been groggy but alert after they moved her from recovery. Beau had shown up with the paperwork, explaining it was just precautionary, in case decisions needed to be made quickly. Smart thinking. He'd said then, medical emergencies move fast. Better to have everything in order. I'd been so focused on Mom's recovery that I'd completely forgotten about the legal side. But Beau hadn't. The question is, he said now, what do you want to do with this information? I don't know yet. Well, you should know that someone tried to access your mother's medical records yesterday. The hospital called me when they were denied. My stomach dropped. Who? Reagan. She claimed to have power of attorney and wanted to schedule some kind of neurological assessment. A what? Cognitive evaluation, usually ordered when there are concerns about someone's mental capacity. The pieces clicked together like a puzzle I didn't want to solve. She's trying to prove Mom's not competent. That would be my guess. If she could establish diminished capacity, she might be able to challenge your guardianship. Can she do that? She can try, but these documents are solid, and your mother was clearly competent when she signed them. Plus, you have 3 weeks of medical records showing consistent, appropriate care decisions. I stared out his office window at the parking lot below. A normal Tuesday afternoon, people going about their normal lives while mine was quietly exploding. Bo, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Shoot! If I wanted to, let's say, make things difficult for Reagan and Tyron, what could I do? He leaned back in his chair. Legally, you have complete authority over your mother's care and finances. You could restrict their access, make all medical decisions, control visitation if you deemed it necessary for her well-being. And they couldn't stop me, not without a court order, and to get that, they'd have to prove you're acting against your mother's best interests. Given that you've been her primary caregiver for weeks, that would be a tough sell. I nodded slowly. I need copies of everything. Layla, what are you thinking? I'm thinking my siblings have been playing games they don't know I can win. He printed out copies of all the documents, organized them in a neat folder. Be careful. Family law can get ugly fast. It's already ugly. That evening, I was helping Mom with her physical therapy exercises when her phone rang. She struggled to reach it, so I answered. Hello. Layla, it's Reagan. Can I talk to Mom? She's doing her exercises right now. It'll just take a minute. I handed Mom the phone and continued guiding her through her arm stretches, but I could hear Reagan's voice clearly through the speaker. Mom, I wanted to let you know I've arranged for a doctor to come see you tomorrow. Just a routine checkup. Mom looked confused. But I just saw Dr. Martinez yesterday. This is a different kind of doctor, a specialist, to make sure your mind is staying sharp after the surgery. My mind is fine. Of course it is. This is just precautionary. Layla doesn't need to be there. I can handle it. I took the phone. What kind of specialist? A neurologist. Just standard follow-up care. Mom doesn't need a neurologist. Her cardiologist cleared her cognitive function weeks ago. Layla, this isn't your decision to make. Actually, it is. Silence on the other end. Then. What do you mean? I mean all of Mom's medical decisions go through me. I have legal guardianship. That's not... We have power of attorney. You have what, exactly? Another pause. We'll discuss this later. She hung up. Mom looked at me with worried eyes. What's happening? Nothing you need to worry about. Just some paperwork confusion. But it wasn't confusion. It was war. And they'd just fired the first shot. My phone buzzed 20 minutes later. A text from Tyron. Emergency family meeting tomorrow night. Mom's house, 7 p.m. I texted back. Can't do 7. Mom has her evening routine. This is important. So is her medication schedule. Layla, stop being difficult. I turned off my phone and helped Mom get ready for bed. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. Some battles you see coming from miles away. Others sneak up on you in the quiet moments when you're just trying to take care of the people you love. This one had been building for weeks. I was finally ready to fight it. They showed up at Mom's house like a delegation. Reagan carried a leather portfolio, Tyron had his laptop, and even Kendra was there, looking uncomfortable in the corner. Mom sat in her recliner, confused about why everyone seemed so serious. So, Reagan began, settling into the couch like she was chairing a board meeting. We need to address this guardianship situation. What situation? Mom asked. The hospital says Layla has legal authority over your medical care. We were under the impression that we had power of attorney. I was folding Mom's laundry, keeping my hands busy. You were under the wrong impression. Reagan opened her portfolio and pulled out a document. Actually, we have this. She handed it to Mom. You signed it 3 weeks ago at the rehabilitation center, remember? Mom squinted at the paper. Maybe? I was so tired then. You were recovering from major surgery, I said, barely conscious half the time. She was conscious enough to sign, Tyrone said, finally looking up from his laptop. We have witnesses. Who? The orderly you probably tipped $20? Reagan's smile was razor sharp. The facility social worker and a nurse, both trained to assess cognitive capacity. I stopped folding. Funny thing about cognitive capacity, the hospital has records showing Mom was on heavy pain medication that entire week. Opioids affect decision-making ability. That's not... Also funny how you waited until I wasn't there to get it signed. We didn't plan it that way, Tyrone said. It just worked out. Right. Just like it worked out that you tried to schedule a neurological evaluation without telling me. Reagan's composure cracked slightly. That was legitimate medical care. No, that was you trying to prove Mom's incompetent so you could override my guardianship. Mom looked between us, her face pale. What's happening? Why are you all fighting? We're not fighting, Mom, Reagan said gently. We're just trying to figure out what's best for your care. I pulled the folder from my purse and set it on the coffee table. Here's what's best. Legal guardianship, filed the night of Mom's surgery, when she was alert, before any medications, with proper witnesses. Reagan grabbed the documents, scanning them quickly. Her face went white. This can't be right. Bo filed them with the hospital and county clerk. They supersede anything you got signed later. Bo, your ex-boyfriend? Bo the lawyer, who actually knows what he's doing. Tyrone leaned forward. Layla, this is insane. You can't just take over Mom's life. I'm not taking over anything. I'm taking care of her, like I have been for a month while you two were busy with your work commitments. That's not fair, Reagan said. We've been supportive. Supportive? When? When you showed up 4 hours late to the hospital? When you suggested putting her in a home? When you tried to have her declared mentally incompetent? We never... The neurological evaluation, Reagan. What was that for? She was quiet for a long moment. Then, we were concerned about her memory issues. What memory issues? She's been confused lately, forgetting things. She's recovering from major surgery. Of course, she's tired and forgetful. It's more than that, Tyrone said. Last week she called me 3 times asking the same question. I looked at Mom, who was staring at her hands. What question? She wanted to know when you were coming home. I told her you were living here now, but she kept forgetting. My chest tightened. Mom? I get confused sometimes, she said quietly. About what day it is, or whether I took my pills. But I'm not losing my mind. Of course you're not, I said. You're healing. Reagan stood up, pacing to the window. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're not seeing the bigger picture, Layla. What happens when she needs more care than you can provide? We'll figure it out. How? You've already used up your savings. You're not working. What's your long-term plan? My plan is to take care of our mother. That's not a plan. That's martyrdom. The word hit like a slap. Excuse me? You heard me. You're so busy being the hero that you can't see you're in over your head. I stood up slowly. Get out. Layla, get out of my mother's house. It's not your house, Tyrone said. It's Mom's. And I'm her legal guardian, which means I decide who's welcome here. Reagan gathered her papers. Fine. But this isn't over. Actually, it is. You want to challenge my guardianship? Go ahead. Take it to court. Explain to a judge why you tried to manipulate a post-surgical patient into signing documents while she was on pain medication. We were protecting her interests. You were protecting your own interests. There's a difference. They filed out without saying goodbye to Mom. Kendra lingered at the door. For what it's worth, she said quietly, I think you're doing the right thing. After they left, Mom and I sat in silence. The house felt hollow, like something had been broken that couldn't be fixed. Did I do something wrong? Mom asked. No, you didn't do anything wrong. Then why are they so angry? I looked at her, really looked at her, frail, confused, dependent on me for everything from medications to meals. But still, my mother. Still the woman who'd raised us, loved us, sacrificed for us. Because they wanted control, and they don't have it. Do you want control? The question caught me off guard. I want you to be safe and cared for. That's not the same thing. No, it wasn't. But it was all I had. The next few weeks felt like living in a house made of glass. Every conversation with Mom was careful, measured. She'd started asking strange questions. Layla, did you really spend all your money on my surgery? Don't worry about that, Mom. But Reagan said you might resent me for it later. I looked up from sorting her medications. When did Reagan say that? Yesterday. Or maybe it was Tuesday. She called while you were at the grocery store. Reagan had been calling. A lot. Always when I wasn't around. Always asking Mom how she was feeling, if she needed anything, if I was taking good care of her. What else did Reagan say? Mom's face scrunched up, trying to remember. She said you've been under a lot of stress, that maybe I should consider other options for care. What kind of options? I don't remember exactly. Something about professional help. I finished organizing the pill dispenser, my hands steady even though my heart was racing. Mom, do you want professional help? I want to get better. I want to stop being such a burden. You're not a burden. Reagan says. I don't care what Reagan says. The sharpness in my voice made Mom flinch. I immediately felt guilty. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to snap. Reagan doesn't live here. She doesn't see how much progress you're making. But was she making progress? Some days were good. Mom would remember to take her morning pills, could shower with minimal help. Other days she'd ask me the same question 5 times, or forget we'd already eaten lunch. Thursday afternoon, Stacy knocked on the door. Mom's best friend had been coming by regularly, bringing groceries and gossip from the neighborhood. How's our patient today? She asked, settling into the kitchen chair with a cup of coffee. Good days and bad days, I said. That's normal after what she's been through. My sister had heart surgery 2 years ago. Took her 6 months to feel like herself again. Mom shuffled into the kitchen in her slippers. Stacy, I didn't know you were coming. I called this morning, remember? Said I'd bring those magazines you like. Mom looked confused. You did. Stacy and I exchanged glances. It's okay, Stacy said gently. I brought them anyway. After Mom went to take her afternoon nap, Stacy pulled me aside. Layla, I need to tell you something. Reagan came by yesterday. Here. No, my house. Said she was worried about your mother's memory issues. Asked if I'd noticed anything concerning. My stomach dropped. What did you tell her? The truth. That Yolanda seems tired and forgetful, but nothing unusual for someone recovering from major surgery. Stacy paused. But there's something else. She asked about your mother's finances. What about them? Whether she was still managing her own bills, making financial decisions. Reagan seemed very interested in who had access to the bank accounts. Did you tell her anything? I told her it wasn't my business, but Layla, she was taking notes. That evening, I called Beau. They're building a case, he said after I explained, trying to establish a pattern of cognitive decline. But Mom's fine. She's just recovering. I believe you, but if they can get enough people to say she's confused, forgetful, making poor decisions, they could challenge the guardianship. Exactly. Have you noticed any unusual financial activity? Missing money? Unpaid bills? I pulled out Mom's checkbook and bank statements. Everything looked normal at first glance. Then I saw it. A monthly automatic withdrawal I didn't recognize. There's something here. $500 a month to RC Consulting. When did that start? I flipped through older statements. About 8 months ago. What's RC Consulting? I'll look into it. In the meantime, you might want to check if there are any other accounts or financial arrangements you don't know about. The next morning, I went through Mom's desk while she was at physical therapy. In the bottom drawer, I found a folder labeled Financial Planning. Inside were documents I'd never seen, investment accounts, a second checking account, and a contract with RC Consulting. Reagan's signature was on everything. The contract was for financial management services. Reagan had been taking $500 a month to oversee Mom's retirement planning. But there was no evidence of any actual planning, just monthly withdrawals. I photographed everything and called Beau immediately. This is elder financial abuse, he said, after I sent him the photos. Reagan's been siphoning money from your mother under the guise of financial planning. For 8 months, $4,000 so far. And look at the signature date on your mother's authorization. It's from right after her diagnosis, when she was scared about her health. She took advantage of Mom being scared. That's exactly what she did. The question is, what do you want to do about it? I was still processing when Mom came home from therapy, exhausted and shaky. How was it? I asked. Hard, but the therapist says I'm improving. She sat down heavily in her recliner. Layla, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think I'm losing my mind? The question broke my heart. Why would you ask that? Reagan keeps asking if I remember things. Yesterday she wanted to know if I remembered signing some papers about money. I told her I didn't, and she looked so worried. What papers? I don't know. She said it was important, but I couldn't remember. Mom's eyes filled with tears. What if something's really wrong with me? I knelt beside her chair and took her hands. Mom, there's nothing wrong with your mind. You're healing from a major surgery. It's normal to be tired and forgetful. But Reagan said, Reagan's been lying to you. The words came out harder than I intended. Mom stared at me in shock. What do you mean? I showed her the financial documents. She's been taking money from your account. $500 every month for financial planning that never happened. Mom studied the papers, her hands trembling. I don't understand. She convinced you to sign these when you were scared about your health. Then she used them to steal from you. That can't be right. Reagan wouldn't. Reagan would, and she has been. Mom was quiet for a long time, staring at the documents. When she finally looked up, her eyes were different, clearer. What do we do? For the first time in weeks, she'd said, we. We fight back. I spent the weekend building a case like I was preparing for war. Bank statements, medical records, phone logs, everything organized in neat folders on Mom's dining room table. Bo had walked me through what we'd need to file a formal complaint. Elder financial abuse is a felony, he'd explained, but you'll need solid documentation. I had it. $4,000 in unauthorized withdrawals, contracts signed under duress, and a pattern of manipulation that went back months. Monday morning, I was reviewing everything one more time when Mom's landline rang. "I'll get it," Mom said, reaching for the phone. "Actually, let me." I'd been screening her calls all weekend. "Layla, it's Reagan. I need to speak with Mom." "She's resting. It's important. There's been a development with her care situation." "What kind of development?" "I'd rather discuss it with her directly." "Well, I'd rather you discuss it with me, since I'm her legal guardian." A pause. "Fine. I've arranged for a care assessment. A social worker is coming Thursday to evaluate Mom's living situation." My blood went cold. "You did what?" "It's standard procedure when there are concerns about an elderly person's welfare." "What concerns?" "Neighbors have reported seeing Mom wandering outside in her nightgown. Stacy mentioned she seems confused and forgetful. There are questions about whether she's receiving adequate care." "That's complete bullshit, and you know it." "Language, Layla. This is about Mom's safety. This is about you trying to get control back. The social worker will make that determination, Thursday at 2 p.m. She hung up. I immediately called Bo. "Can she do this?" "Anyone can request a welfare check. But if the social worker finds no evidence of neglect or abuse, it goes nowhere. And if they do find something, then we have a problem." I spent the next 3 days preparing. The house was spotless, Mom's medications perfectly organized, her medical records up to date. I coached Mom on what to expect. "Just be yourself," I told her. "Answer their questions honestly." "What if I forget something?" "Then you forget something. That's normal. But..." I was terrified. What if Mom had one of her confused days? What if she couldn't remember taking her medications or got flustered and said something that sounded concerning? Thursday arrived grey and drizzling. The social worker, Ms. Patterson, showed up exactly at 2 p.m., a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a clipboard. "I'm here to do a routine wellness check," she explained. "Just want to make sure everyone's doing okay." She interviewed Mom first, asking about her daily routine, her medications, how she was feeling. Mom did well, answering clearly and calmly. "And how would you describe your relationship with your daughter, Layla?" "She's been wonderful. I don't know what I would have done without her." "Do you feel safe in her care?" "Of course. She takes such good care of me." Then Ms. Patterson wanted to speak with me, privately. "Your mother seems well cared for," she said. "The house is clean, her medications are properly managed, and she appears to be in good spirits." Relief flooded through me. "So, we're okay?" "Well, there is one concern. I received some troubling information about financial irregularities." My stomach dropped. "What kind of irregularities?" "Allegations that you've been mismanaging your mother's finances, large unauthorized withdrawals, unpaid bills." "That's not true. I'm required to investigate any financial abuse allegations. Do you have access to your mother's bank accounts?" "Yes, but..." "And have you made any large withdrawals recently?" "Only for medical expenses and household needs." She made notes on her clipboard. I'll need to see financial records going back 6 months. I brought out the folders I'd prepared, including the RC consulting documents. Actually, I think you should see this. Ms. Patterson reviewed everything carefully. Her expression grew more serious as she read. These show regular unauthorized withdrawals by someone named Reagan. Is that a family member? My sister. She's been taking $500 a month under the pretense of financial planning. Does your mother know about this? She does now. Reagan convinced her to sign the authorization when Mom was scared about her health diagnosis. Ms. Patterson made more notes. This is concerning. Have you reported this to the authorities? I was planning to file a complaint this week. I'd recommend doing that immediately. This appears to be a clear case of elder financial abuse. She closed her folder. As for the welfare check, I see no evidence of neglect or inadequate care. Your mother is fortunate to have such a dedicated caregiver. After she left, I called Beau immediately. She's filing a report recommending no action on the welfare complaint, I told him, but she wants us to pursue the financial abuse case. Good. I'll start the paperwork today. Beau, there's something else. Reagan somehow knew about the social worker visit before I did. She's the one who requested it. That's not unusual. Family members often... No, you don't understand. She knew exactly what questions would be asked, what concerns would be raised, like she'd done this before. A long pause. What are you thinking? I'm thinking Reagan's been planning this for a lot longer than we realized. That evening, Mom was unusually quiet during dinner. Finally, she spoke. Layla, I need to tell you something. What is it? Reagan came by yesterday while you were at the pharmacy. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. She... what? She said she was worried about the social worker visit, that they might try to separate us. What else did she say? Mom's hands were shaking. She said, if I really loved you, I'd go to a care facility voluntarily, so you could get your life back. And what did you tell her? I told her I wanted to stay with you, that you were taking good care of me. Mom looked up with tears in her eyes. But she said you were just being nice, that deep down you resented having to take care of me. Mom, that's not true. She said you'd never tell me because you're too kind, but that I was ruining your life. I reached across the table and took her hands. Look at me. You are not ruining my life. Taking care of you is not a burden. It's what family does. But your job, your savings, can be replaced. You can't. Mom started crying then, and I moved around the table to hug her. Over her shoulder, I saw my phone lighting up with text messages. 3 missed calls from Reagan, 2 from Tyron. The war was escalating. Friday morning, my phone rang at 6 a.m. Tyron's name flashed on the screen. Layla, I need your help. His voice was shaky, desperate. I sat up in bed, instantly alert. What's wrong? I lost my job. The startup folded. I'm completely screwed. I'm sorry, but I know we haven't been getting along, but you're family. I need to borrow some money, just until I get back on my feet. I almost laughed. Tyron, I don't have any money. Remember, I spent it all on Mom's surgery while you were at client lunches. Come on, you must have something. A credit card, savings account. I have $17 in checking and maxed out credit cards. What about Mom's accounts? You have access now, right? There it was, the real reason for the call. Are you seriously asking me to steal from our mother? It's not stealing if it's for family. Mom would want to help. Like she wanted to help when Reagan was taking $500 a month. Silence. Then, "What are you talking about?" "RC Consulting. Reagan's been siphoning money from Mom for 8 months. That's not possible. I have the bank statements, the contracts, all with Reagan's signature." Another long pause. "Layla, you don't understand. Reagan was trying to protect Mom's assets." "By stealing them?" "By managing them properly. Mom was making bad financial decisions after her diagnosis. Reagan stepped in to help. Help herself to $4,000. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like, Tyron?" Look, I can't get into this right now. I need money. Can you help me or not?" "No." "Fine, but don't expect me to back you up when Reagan takes this to court." He hung up. An hour later, Kendra knocked on the door. She looked exhausted, her usual put-together appearance replaced by wrinkled clothes and no makeup. "Can we talk?" she asked. I let her in, making coffee while she sat at the kitchen table. Mom was still sleeping upstairs. "Tyron told me about the phone call," she said. "I'm sure he did." "Layla, there's something you need to know about Reagan and the money." I set down her coffee cup. "I'm listening." "Tyron's known about the RC Consulting thing for months. He's been getting a cut." My blood went cold. "What?" $200 a month. Reagan told him it was for family coordination services, helping manage your mom's care from a distance. "He's been stealing too." "Not exactly. He genuinely thought it was legitimate. Reagan showed him documents, explained how it was all legal and above board." "But you didn't believe it." Kendra shook her head. "I work in accounting. I know what elder financial abuse looks like. But Tyron wouldn't listen. He said Reagan knew what she was doing." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because Reagan's planning something big. She came by last night after Tyron called you. They had a huge fight." "About what?" "About you. Reagan's furious that the social worker didn't find anything wrong. She's convinced you somehow manipulated the situation." "How could I manipulate a professional assessment?" "That's what Tyron asked. Reagan said you're smarter than they gave you credit for, that you've been playing some kind of long game." I almost laughed. "The only game I've been playing is keeping our mother alive and healthy. I know that. But Reagan doesn't see it that way. She thinks you orchestrated this whole thing, the guardianship, the financial evidence, everything, to cut them out and take control of your mom's assets." "What assets? Mom's retirement savings? Her social security?" "Reagan seems to think there's more. Life insurance policies, property investments. She's been going through your mom's papers." "When?" "Yesterday, while you were at the grocery store. She has a key." My hands clenched around my coffee cup. "She's been in this house?" "Multiple times, looking for financial documents, legal papers, anything she can use." "That's breaking and entering." "Not if she has permission from the homeowner." "She doesn't have permission from me, and I'm the legal guardian." "Try proving that in court. Reagan's smart, Layla. She's been building a case that you're the one manipulating your mom. The sudden guardianship, the financial control, isolating her from family. I'm not isolating anyone. They're the ones who stopped visiting." "I know. But Reagan's spinning it differently. She's telling people you won't let them see their mother." I felt the walls closing in. "What else did she say?" "She's planning to file for emergency guardianship. Claims your mom is being held against her will by someone with financial motives." "That's insane." "Is it? Think about it from an outside perspective. You suddenly have complete control over a vulnerable elderly woman's life and finances. Your siblings are cut out entirely. It could look suspicious. But I have documentation, the original guardianship papers, the evidence of Reagan's theft. Reagan's claiming those documents were forged, that you manipulated your mom into signing them when she was medicated and confused. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Emergency guardianship hearing scheduled for Monday 9 a.m. County Courthouse. You are required to appear with the ward. I showed Kendra the message. It's starting, she said quietly. Kendra, why are you helping me? Tyron's your boyfriend. Because I've watched you take care of your mom for 2 months. I've seen how much you love her, how hard you work to make her comfortable and happy. And I've watched Reagan and Tyron treat this whole thing like a business transaction. She stood up, gathering her purse. There's one more thing. Reagan hired a lawyer, someone who specializes in elder abuse cases. To prosecute her own case? No, to prosecute yours. After Kendra left, I sat in the quiet kitchen, staring at my phone. Monday was 3 days away. 3 days to prepare for a fight that could determine everything. Upstairs, Mom called for help with her morning medications. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling heavier than the last. Good morning, she said brightly. Did I hear voices downstairs? Just Kendra stopping by. That's nice. She's such a sweet girl. Mom paused, studying my face. You look worried. Is everything okay? I looked at this woman who'd raised me, loved me, trusted me with her life. In 3 days, I might lose the right to protect her. Everything's fine, Mom. Let's get your pills sorted out. Some battles you fight for principle, others you fight for survival. This one was both. Monday morning arrived like a funeral. I helped Mom into her best dress, the navy blue one she'd worn to my college graduation. Her hands shook as I fastened her pearl necklace. I don't understand why we have to go to court, she said for the 3rd time. It's just a formality, to make sure you're being taken care of properly. But you are taking care of me properly? I know. We just have to prove it to a judge. The courthouse was intimidating. Marble floors, high ceilings, the kind of place that made you feel small. Beau met us at the entrance, carrying a briefcase that looked like it weighed 50 pounds. How are we looking? I asked. Good. I've got everything organized. Bank records, medical files, witness statements. Witness statements? Stacy, your mom's physical therapist, even the social worker who did the wellness check. They're all willing to testify about the quality of care you've been providing. We found seats in the courtroom. Across the aisle, Reagan sat with a man in an expensive suit. Her lawyer, I assumed. She looked polished and professional in a charcoal business suit. Tyron sat behind her, avoiding eye contact. The judge was younger than I'd expected, maybe mid-40s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. This is a petition for emergency guardianship, she began, filed by Reagan Bennett on behalf of her mother, Yolanda Bennett. The petitioner claims the current guardian is acting against the ward's best interests. Reagan's lawyer stood up. Your Honour, we have evidence that Ms. Layla Bennett has isolated the ward from her family, made questionable financial decisions, and may have obtained guardianship through fraudulent means. That's a serious allegation. What evidence do you have? The guardianship documents were signed during a medical emergency when the ward was heavily medicated and not of sound mind. Ms. Layla Bennett has since used this authority to cut off the ward's other children from participating in her care. Beau stood up. Your Honour, we have extensive documentation showing that the guardianship was properly obtained and that Ms. Layla Bennett has provided exemplary care for her mother. I'd like to hear from the ward herself, the judge said. Mrs. Bennett, how do you feel about your current living situation? Mom looked tiny in the witness chair, but her voice was steady. I'm very happy living with Layla. She takes wonderful care of me. Do you feel isolated from your other children? No, Your Honor. They're welcome to visit any time. They just choose not to. Reagan's lawyer tried a different approach. Mrs. Bennett, are you aware that your daughter Layla spent her entire life savings on your medical care? Yes. Do you think that might create resentment or pressure you to feel grateful? Mom's back straightened. Layla saved my life. If that creates pressure, it's the pressure to get better so I can be worthy of her sacrifice. But don't you think your other children might be better equipped to handle your long-term care needs? No, I don't. The lawyer looked frustrated. Mrs. Bennett, are you aware that there have been irregularities in your financial accounts? Yes, my daughter Reagan has been stealing from me. The courtroom went dead silent. Reagan's face went white. I'm sorry, what did you say? The judge asked. Reagan convinced me to sign papers when I was scared about my heart condition. She said it was for financial planning, but she was just taking my money. $500 every month. Bo stood up. Your Honor, we have documentation of this financial abuse. He handed over the bank statements and contracts. Reagan's lawyer was scrambling. Your Honor, my client was providing legitimate financial services. What services? The judge asked, studying the documents. I see withdrawals, but no evidence of any actual financial planning or investment management. We can provide, Your Honor, Bo interrupted. We also have evidence that the petitioner attempted to have the ward declared mentally incompetent through fraudulent means, including coaching her on what to say to medical professionals. He played a recording from Mom's security system. Reagan's voice was clear. Mom, when the doctor asks about your memory, tell him you've been confused lately. It's important for your care. The judge's expression hardened. Ms. Reagan Bennett, please stand. Reagan stood shakily. Based on the evidence presented, it appears you have engaged in elder financial abuse and attempted to manipulate medical assessments. I'm dismissing your petition for guardianship and referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges. Your Honor, please. Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order. You are not to contact the ward or enter her residence without supervision. Reagan's lawyer was packing up his briefcase. We'll appeal this decision. You're welcome to try, but I suggest you focus on preparing for the criminal investigation. Outside the courthouse, Tyron approached us hesitantly. Layla, I'm sorry. I didn't know how bad it was. Yes, you did. You just didn't care as long as you were getting paid. I know I screwed up. Is there any way we can— No, there isn't. He walked away without another word. Mom took my arm as we headed to the car. I'm proud of you, she said. For what? For fighting for me, for not giving up when it got hard. You're my mother. Of course I fought for you. Not everyone would have. She was right. Not everyone would have, but I wasn't everyone. I was her daughter, and that meant something. Stacy was waiting at the house with a casserole and a bottle of wine. How did it go? We won, Mom said simply. More than won, I added. Reagan's facing criminal charges. Good. It's about time someone held her accountable. That evening, Mom and I sat on the porch watching the sunset. She was stronger now, more like herself. The confusion was mostly gone, replaced by a quiet determination to get better. Do you regret it? she asked suddenly. Regret what? Everything. The money, the job, taking care of me instead of living your own life. I thought about it honestly. My savings were gone, my career on hold, my relationship with my siblings destroyed. But looking at Mom, healthy and safe and home where she belonged, I knew my answer. No, I don't regret it, but I'll never call it justice either. Just necessary. Mom nodded, understanding. Some things you do because they're right. Others you do because you're the only one who will. The difference matters less than you'd think.
The air in the funeral home felt thick, not with grief, but with something far more suffocating. Expectation. Every polished shoe, every hushed whisper, every performative sniffle was a calculated move. I stood by the lilies, a quiet observer, as I always was. My name's Callie O'Brien, and at 28, I'd spent most of my life perfecting the art of blending into the wallpaper at family gatherings. Today was no different, even with Grandma Emery's casket front and center. Quick question. Where in the world are you right now? Let me know in the comments. My mother, cold and elegant as ever, gave me a fleeting, almost imperceptible nod from across the room, already deep in conversation with Aunt Camila. Camila, in her early 50s, was draped in black silk, her face a mask of sorrow that didn't quite reach her eyes. She was the family's self-appointed matriarch, now that Grandma was gone, and the executor of the will. Beside her, her daughter Freya, 30, fiddled with a pearl necklace, her expression a mix of forced solemnity and barely contained excitement. Freya and I had a history of cruel rivalry, mostly initiated by her, dating back to kindergarten. The lawyer, a stiff man in a charcoal suit, cleared his throat, signaling the main event. Everyone settled into the plush chairs, a collective tension rising. He began, his voice droning through the legal jargon. Beach houses, stocks, businesses, Grandma Emery's considerable fortune was parceled out like party favors. Freya's name came up first for the sprawling beach house in Malibu. A small, smug smile touched her lips. Sienna Butler, 35, my cousin who treated social media likes like currency, got the bulk of the O'Brien family stocks. She subtly checked her phone under the table. Even Aunt Kayla Gonzalez, 42, usually so passive, perked up when her cut of a quiet investment fund was announced. Chase Diaz, Camilla's 33-year-old son, looked relieved when he heard about the business shares. Then, the lawyer paused, adjusting his glasses. And to Callie O'Brien? A hush fell. Every eye in the room, even my mother's, flicked to me. I braced myself. Grandma Emery, quirky and brutally honest, had always been my only ally in this family. She'd always said, "You'll get your chapter, Callie. Don't worry." It was her way of telling me I mattered, that I wouldn't be overlooked. The lawyer continued, his voice devoid of emotion. The sum of 41 cents. A collective gasp, quickly stifled into awkward coughs. 41 cents. Not 41,000, not even $41, just 41 cents. Then he read the accompanying note, a small, elegant script on aged paper. To Callie, a reminder that some things are simply forgettable. The words hit me like a physical blow, but my face remained a carefully constructed blank. My heart hammered against my ribs, a wild bird trapped in a cage. Forgettable? Grandma Emery, who'd shared secrets with me no one else knew, who'd taught me how to pick locks and read people's tells. The woman who'd promised me my chapter. I saw Camilla's triumphant smirk, Freya's barely concealed snicker. Sienna looked genuinely shocked, probably because it wasn't dramatic enough for her social media. Kayla just looked away, embarrassed for me. I stood there, the silence stretching, the weight of their pity and amusement a physical thing. But beneath the humiliation, a tiny, cold spark ignited. This wasn't Grandma, not the Grandma I knew. She was sharp, yes, but never cruel without purpose, and certainly not this cruel. Something was off. Terribly, fundamentally off. I nodded politely to the lawyer, a quiet "thank you," before turning to the door. No one tried to stop me. No one ever did. As I slipped out before the wake, the fake condolences and forced smiles fading behind me, my fingers brushed against a small, worn recipe book tucked inside my purse. Grandma Emery's old cookbook. I'd grabbed it from her nightstand that morning, a last-minute impulse. And inside, pressed between the yellowed pages of her famous apple pie recipe, was a different letter, a different will, one no one else had noticed. The funeral home was a blur. I drove away from it, the 41 cents and the scathing note burning in my mind, but not in the way Camilla and Freya probably imagined. It wasn't humiliation that consumed me. It was a cold, quiet certainty that I had been right. Something was wrong. I pulled into my small, rented apartment parking lot, the kind of place that screamed entry-level paralegal salary, even though I hadn't been a paralegal in years. Inside, the silence was a welcome change from the suffocating performative grief. I walked straight to the kitchen table, my hands steady as I pulled Grandma Emery's worn recipe book from my purse. Its pages smelled faintly of cinnamon and old paper. I found it, tucked deep within the desserts section, between a handwritten recipe for lemon bars and a faded newspaper clipping about a local bake-off Grandma won in the 70s. It was an envelope, sealed with a blob of red wax, bearing Grandma's distinctive, slightly smudged thumbprint. My name, Callie O'Brien, was scrawled across the front in her familiar, looping script. My fingers trembled slightly as I broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly, and a small, antique silver key. The paper was a will, dated 6 months ago. Grandma Emery had been frail then, but still sharp as a tack. I read it, my eyes scanning the legal language I knew so well from my paralegal days. Every single asset, from the Malibu beach house to the O'Brien family businesses, the stocks, the quiet investment funds, all of it, unequivocally, was bequeathed to me. Callie O'Brien, the one who got 41 cents. My brain, dormant for too long, snapped into focus. This wasn't just a different will. It was a later will. The one read at the funeral must have been an older version, or worse, a forgery based on an older version. The note, forgettable, was definitely not Grandma's style for a final, legitimate message. Not for me. The next morning, I made a call. Nick Valdez. We'd gone to high school together, shared a few classes, and he'd always been the kind of guy who saw things others missed. He was 32 now, a few years older than me, and had made a name for himself as a probate litigation attorney. He specialized in exactly this kind of mess. "Callie? Wow, it's been a minute," he said, his voice warm and familiar. "It has. I need a favor, Nick. A big one, and it's sensitive." He listened patiently as I laid it all out. The funeral, the humiliating 41 cents, the note, and then the discovery of the real will. I didn't mention the note's content, just that there was one. He was quiet for a moment after I finished. "You're telling me your Grandma Emery, the one who basically owned half the county, left you 41 cents, and then you found a later will leaving you everything?" he asked, a hint of disbelief in his tone. "That's exactly what I'm telling you. I have the document. It looks legitimate. I know enough about the law to know it looks good, but I need a professional opinion. Yours." He agreed to meet me at his office that afternoon. The moment he saw the document, his expression shifted. He examined the paper, the signature, the notary stamp. He held it up to the light, then pulled out a magnifying glass. "Callie," he said slowly, looking up at me, his eyes serious, "this looks surprisingly solid. The signature matches known samples of your grandmother's, and the witness signatures and notary stamp appear authentic. If this can be authenticated, it absolutely supersedes any previous will. A wave of something akin to vindication washed over me. This was it. This was the truth. I remembered the last time I saw Grandma Emery, maybe a month before she passed. She was frail, propped up in her bed, her mind still lucid, though her body was failing. "They're all circling, Callie," she'd rasped, her eyes twinkling. "Like vultures. They think I don't see it. They think I'm a fool." I'd just squeezed her hand, not knowing what to say. She'd always been so perceptive. "But you, my dear," she'd continued, her voice softer, "you never pretended. You just were. You listened. You saw. I've taken care of you, Callie. I've left everything to the one person who didn't pretend to love me for my money." She'd smiled then, a genuine, warm smile that reached her eyes. "You'll get your chapter, don't worry." Her words echoed in my head, a stark contrast to the forgettable note. Nick leaned back in his chair, tapping the will gently against his desk. "So, the question is, Callie, what do you want to do? You trust anyone in your family to handle this legally before they panic and cover their tracks?" I met his gaze, my own eyes cold and steady. "I trust karma, but," I added, a slow, deliberate smile spreading across my face, "I'll help it along." The first step was finding the right expert. Nick, true to his word, connected me with Dalton Stone, a forensic handwriting specialist with a reputation for being meticulous and unflappable. He was 55, sharp-eyed, and spoke with a quiet authority that inspired confidence. I handed him the two documents, the note I'd received at the funeral and the legitimate will I'd found in Grandma's cookbook. "I need to know if this note, forgettable, was written by my grandmother," I explained, keeping my voice level. "And if the signature on the will read at the funeral matches the signature on this one." I provided him with several undisputed samples of Grandma Emery's handwriting and signature. Dalton took the documents, his movements precise. "I'll need a few days," he said, his gaze fixed on the paper. "I'll compare stroke pressure, slant, baseline habits, letter formations. It's a science, Ms. O'Brien, not guesswork." While Dalton worked, Nick and I prepared the formal dispute. My paralegal instincts, long dormant, hummed back to life. I knew the forms, the procedures, the precise language required. We weren't trying to make a spectacle. We were simply challenging the validity of the will that had been presented, asserting the existence of a later, legitimate one. It was a quiet legal maneuver, a chess move made in the shadows. A week later, Dalton called. "I have your analysis, Ms. O'Brien. It's conclusive." He confirmed what I already suspected. The signature on the will read at the funeral was indeed Grandma Emery's, but it was from a much older, superseded document. The note, however, was a different story entirely. "The note that accompanied the 41 cents," Dalton stated, his voice flat, "is not your grandmother's handwriting, not even close. The characteristics indicate a much younger hand, less developed, more contemporary, likely female given the specific stylistic elements." A cold satisfaction settled in my stomach. "Thank you, Dalton." With his report in hand, Nick filed the formal dispute in probate court. The process was initiated, and the court, as legally obligated, notified all named beneficiaries of the contested will, including Aunt Camilla, the executor. Almost immediately, the ripple effect began. Camilla, usually so composed, started acting off. I didn't see it directly, but my mother, ever the family gossip, called me, ostensibly to complain about the price of lilies, but quickly veered into how Camilla's been a nervous wreck since that court notice arrived. Freya too, they're whispering constantly. I imagined Camilla, 50s, her controlling nature now under threat, and Freya, 30, shallow but intelligent enough to know what a legal challenge meant. They were probably scrambling, trying to figure out how I, the quiet, forgettable one, could possibly be challenging them. A few days later, Nick set up a conference call. It was a preliminary discussion, mandated by the court to address the dispute. On the line were Nick and I, Camilla and Freya, and their lawyer, a slick, overconfident man named Mr. Henderson. Dalton Stone was also present at Nick's request to present his findings. My client, Ms. Callie O'Brien, asserts that the will presented at the reading is not the final legitimate will of Emery O'Brien. Nick began, his voice calm and professional. We have evidence of a later, valid will, and also evidence that the accompanying note was not written by the deceased. Camilla scoffed. This is ridiculous. Emery was clear, and that note was absolutely her handwriting. She was eccentric. Freya chimed in, her voice a little too high. Yes, Grandma had a very distinct hand. We've seen it our whole lives. Indeed, Dalton Stone interjected, his voice cutting through their bluster. And my analysis confirms that the signature on the initial will is consistent with Ms. O'Brien's earlier work. However, the note, to Callie, a reminder that some things are simply forgettable, exhibits entirely different characteristics. He then launched into a detailed clinical explanation of his findings, describing the pressure points, the pen lifts, the unique letter formations that distinguish the note from Grandma Emery's known handwriting. Camilla interrupted, her voice sharp. This is nonsense. He's mistaken. That's Emery's writing. It has to be, Freya added. She wrote notes like that all the time. It's just like her. Dalton paused, letting their protests hang in the air. Then he delivered the final, devastating blow, his voice flat and unwavering on speakerphone. Respectfully, Ms. Diaz, Ms. Freya, my analysis is definitive. This was written by someone decades younger than Emery O'Brien, most likely female, and certainly not your mother. The line went silent. I just listened, calm, collected, driven. The fuse had been lit. Dalton's words, not your mother, hung in the air like a guillotine blade. The silence on the line was deafening. Camilla and Freya's lawyer, Mr. Henderson, quickly interjected, trying to regain control, but the damage was done. The call ended shortly after, with Nick calmly stating our intention to proceed with the probate dispute. It didn't take long for the news to leak. Probate court filings are public record, and Grandma Emery O'Brien was a well-known figure in the community. Within days, the tabloids, always hungry for a juicy story, had a field day. Air cut out of O'Brien fortune sparks legal battle, one headline screamed. Another, more sensationalist, declared, 41 cents of spite. Granddaughter claims forgery in $1 million will dispute. Sienna Butler, my 35-year-old cousin who thrived on reputation and media attention, was undoubtedly furious. Her carefully curated socialite image relied on being associated with wealth and respectability, not a messy family feud. I could almost picture her frantically calling her publicist, trying to bury the story. But you can't bury a story when it's already gone viral. I, on the other hand, remained quiet. My phone was buzzing with calls from distant relatives and even some reporters, but I ignored them all. I let Nick handle the legal statements, which were sparse and professional. My revenge wasn't about public outcry, not yet. It was about methodical, undeniable truth. But I knew a little push could help. I had one more ace up my sleeve, a quiet, devastating piece of evidence that only I knew about. A few months before Grandma passed, she'd been feeling particularly reflective. She'd asked me to set up her tablet for a video call with an old friend who lived overseas. While I was testing the camera, she'd started talking, rambling a bit, but then she looked directly into the lens, almost as if she knew this moment would come. I'd hit record. The clip was short, maybe 30 seconds. It showed Grandma Emery, frail but lucid, propped up in her bed, her eyes clear and direct. "I know what they're doing," she'd said, her voice a little weak but firm. "They think they're clever, but I've taken care of everything. My final wishes are clear. Everything goes to Callie. She's the only one who truly understands." She'd even given a small knowing smile. "She'll know what to do." I uploaded the clip to a burner social media account. No name attached, just a simple caption. Grandma Emery O'Brien's last words on her will, dated 2 weeks before her passing. I didn't tag anyone, didn't share it with anyone directly. I just put it out there. The internet, being the internet, did the rest. The video spread like wildfire. It was reposted, analyzed, and debated. The contrast between the loving, clear-headed woman in the video and the forgettable note was stark. My phone, which I'd mostly ignored, started pinging with notifications from news alerts. I saw a screenshot of the video, now embedded in an article, and below it, the comment section was a chaotic mix of outrage and speculation. "This is insane. Why would she say this on Tuesday and write the opposite Monday? That family is so shady, I always knew it. Poor Callie, getting 41 cents and then this. Justice for Grandma Emery." The look on her face. She knew something was up. I scrolled through them, a small private smile playing on my lips. Sienna, who thrived on reputation, was probably having a meltdown. This wasn't just a legal battle anymore. It was a public spectacle, and her name was attached to it. She'd tried to bury the media leak, I was sure, but this video was unburyable. Aunt Kayla Gonzalez, 42, who had been so passive, was likely starting to panic. Her quiet cut of the inheritance was no longer so quiet. She valued her privacy, and now, with the family drama splashed across the internet, her name was being dragged into the mess. The video didn't directly implicate her, but the overall scandal certainly put her under an uncomfortable spotlight. She was probably wondering if her cut was worth the potential legal exposure and public scrutiny. I leaned back in my chair, watching the comments roll in. The truth had a way of finding its own path, especially when given a gentle nudge. The hook was set. The viral video of Grandma Emery was the match that lit the fuse on the O'Brien family powder keg. The probate dispute, initially a quiet legal maneuver, exploded into a full-blown media circus. The family infighting began almost immediately, a cacophony of accusations and finger-pointing that echoed through every phone call and whispered conversation. Camilla, in her early 50s, was cornered. Her carefully constructed image as the grieving, responsible executor was crumbling. She blamed Freya, 30, for the note. Freya, in turn, probably blamed Camilla for putting her in that position. Their lawyers, initially united, started turning on each other, each trying to protect their own client from the fallout. The depositions were brutal. Nick, my lawyer, was methodical, calm, and relentless. He had a way of asking questions that seemed innocuous but slowly tightened the noose. My mother, usually so detached, was forced to testify, confirming Grandma Emery's lucidity in her final months. Sienna, 35, tried to deflect, talking about her charitable work, but Nick brought her back to the point. Did she believe Grandma Emery would intentionally humiliate a grandchild? Sienna, for once, was speechless. Kayla, 42, looked terrified, her passive demeanor replaced by a palpable fear of legal exposure. She denied any knowledge of a forged will, claiming she simply accepted what Camilla presented. Then came Freya's deposition. She was brittle, her usual smugness replaced by a nervous tremor. Nick showed her Dalton's forensic report, the video of Grandma, and then the legitimate will. He asked her simply, "Ms. Diaz, did you or did you not know about this later will?" Freya crumbled. She started to cry, real tears, not the performative kind. We found an older will, she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. And then we found another one, the one Callie has. But we thought Grandma had changed her mind again. She was so unpredictable. We thought the first one was what she really wanted, and the note was just a joke. A joke? Nick's voice was devoid of judgment, but the question hung heavy in the air. A joke that cut your cousin out of her inheritance and labeled her forgettable? Freya just sobbed, unable to answer. She admitted they had found the later will, the one leaving everything to me shortly after Grandma's death, but had decided to ignore it, claiming they believed it was a temporary whim. It was a flimsy excuse, easily dismantled by the evidence. Meanwhile, Nick had hired a private investigator. Not to dig up dirt on my family, they were doing that themselves, but to find concrete evidence of their attempts to cover their tracks. The investigator delivered. He found surveillance footage from a UPS store, dated a week after Grandma's funeral. The grainy video showed Freya, looking agitated, attempting to backdate notarized documents. She was trying to create a paper trail that would support their fabricated story of Grandma's supposed change of mind. The clerk, thankfully, had refused, citing policy. The evidence was piling up. Freya's guilt was building, her emotional state deteriorating under the pressure. She was cracking, and Camilla, seeing her daughter falter, doubled down. A few days after Freya's disastrous deposition, I received a call from Mr. Henderson, Camilla's lawyer. He was no longer slick. His voice was tight with desperation. "Ms. O'Brien," he began, "my client, Ms. Camilla Diaz, is prepared to offer you a settlement. A very generous settlement. $100,000 in exchange for you dropping this dispute and walking away." I let the silence stretch, picturing Camilla, desperate and cornered, trying to buy her way out. She thought money was the answer to everything. She thought I was like them. $100,000, I repeated, my voice calm, almost bored. "That's a lot of money, Mr. Henderson." "It is," he said, relief creeping into his tone. "It would resolve this quietly without further public embarrassment for anyone involved." "Tell Camilla," I said, my voice hardening, "that she can keep her cash. You see, I don't want money, not theirs anyway. I want the house her lies are resting in." He sputtered, clearly unprepared for my refusal. I hung up, a cold, satisfying certainty settling deep in my bones. The game wasn't about money for me. It was about something far more valuable: justice. And the beach house was just the beginning. The probate trial began 3 months after Grandma Emery's funeral. The courtroom was packed, a mix of curious onlookers, local reporters, and a smattering of distant relatives who had probably never even met Grandma but loved a good spectacle. I sat beside Nick, calm and collected, while across the aisle, Camilla and Freya looked like they hadn't slept in weeks. Mr. Henderson, their lawyer, looked significantly less confident than he had during the depositions. Nick presented our case with surgical precision. He laid out the timeline: Grandma's passing, the reading of the forged will, my discovery of the legitimate one. He introduced Dalton Stone, the forensic handwriting specialist, who calmly and scientifically explained why the forgettable note was a forgery and why the legitimate will's signature was undeniably Grandma Emery's. Dalton even explained how the signature on the forged will was indeed Grandma's, but from an earlier superseded document, proving they hadn't forged her signature, but rather used an old invalid document. Then came the video. Nick played the short clip of Grandma Emery, clear-eyed and resolute, stating her true wishes. The courtroom was silent, captivated. You could hear a pin drop. The judge watched intently, his expression unreadable. Camilla took the stand, her usual composure shattered. Nick's cross-examination was masterful. He didn't yell or accuse, he simply presented facts, one after another, until her carefully constructed narrative crumbled. He asked about the timing of the will she presented, about her knowledge of Grandma's declining health but sharp mind, about her relationship with Freya. He brought up the UPS store footage, showing Freya's attempt to backdate documents. Camilla denied everything, deflected, and contradicted herself until her credibility was in tatters. She tried to maintain her air of authority, but it was clear to everyone in the room that she was lying. Freya, looking pale and fragile, was called next. She repeated her story about thinking Grandma had changed her mind, but under Nick's gentle, relentless questioning, her previous deposition testimony, where she admitted finding the later will and choosing to ignore it, was read back to her. She broke down again, sobbing on the stand, muttering about how Camilla had pressured her. Then Nick called his final witness, Norman Butler. Norman, 86, was Grandma Emery's old notary friend, a kind man with a shock of white hair and a slight tremor in his hands. He walked slowly to the stand, aided by a cane, but his eyes were sharp. "Mr. Butler," Nick began, "can you confirm your relationship with Emery O'Brien?" "Emery was a dear friend," Norman said, his voice raspy but clear. "Known her for 60 years, notarized many a document for her over the decades. And do you recall notarizing a will for Ms. O'Brien approximately 6 months ago?" Nick held up the legitimate will, the one I'd found. Norman squinted at it, then nodded. "Indeed, I remember it well. Emery was in good spirits that day. She was quite specific about her wishes. Said she wanted to make sure everything was set straight." "And what did she say, if anything, about the contents of this will?" Nick asked, his voice quiet, letting the moment build. Norman looked out at the courtroom, his gaze sweeping over Camilla and Freya, then settling on me. "She signed it right there in front of me," he said, pointing a gnarled finger at the signature line. "And she just laughed, a little chuckle, you know. And she said, 'Callie will have fun burning this house down.' She meant the family's old ways, their greed. She wanted Callie to have the power to change things." The courtroom was silent. You could literally hear people holding their breath. "Callie will have fun burning this house down." It wasn't about destruction, not literally. It was about dismantling the toxic family dynamics, the lies, the greed. It was about justice. Camilla's face was ashen. Freya looked like she was about to faint. Sienna, who had been trying to maintain a facade of detached concern, visibly flinched. Her reputation, her carefully crafted image, was in tatters. She leaned over and whispered something to her lawyer, who then approached the judge. Sienna was withdrawing her claim to the stocks, attempting to save face, to distance herself from the sinking ship. The judge, after a brief recess, returned. His voice was firm, decisive. Based on the overwhelming evidence presented, including forensic analysis, video testimony, and the corroborating testimony of Mr. Norman Butler, this court finds that the will presented by Ms. Camilla Diaz is superseded by the later, legitimate will of Emery O'Brien. The prior will is hereby ruled forged in its presentation, and all assets are frozen pending redistribution according to the legitimate will. He then looked directly at Camilla and Freya. Furthermore, this court recommends criminal charges for fraud and forgery be pursued against Ms. Camilla Diaz and Ms. Freya Diaz. A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Camilla slumped in her seat. Freya buried her face in her hands. I remained unreadable, my expression calm. But inside, a quiet, profound triumph bloomed. The judge's ruling echoed through the courtroom, a final, definitive hammer blow. All assets frozen, criminal charges recommended. The silence that followed was heavy, punctuated only by the muffled sobs of Freya and the stunned gasps from the spectators. Camilla sat motionless, her face a mask of disbelief and defeat. Sienna, having already withdrawn her claim, looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Kayla, true to form, had already slipped out, probably hoping to escape any further spotlight. It took a few weeks for the legal machinery to grind through. The massive ruling in my favor was official. All assets reverted under the legitimate will. The Malibu beach house, the O'Brien family businesses, the stocks Sienna had so coveted, the quiet investment funds Kayla had tried to keep secret. All of it, legally, was mine. Then came the indictments. Camilla Diaz, 50s, and Freya Diaz, 30, were formally indicted for fraud and forgery. The news hit the local papers and national tabloids with a vengeance. The 41 Cents of Spite story had found its villainesses, and the public was eating it up. I remained unreadable, just as I had been throughout the trial. There was no outward celebration, no smugness, just a quiet, deep-seated satisfaction. A month later, I moved into the beach house. It was a sprawling, beautiful place with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific. Freya's beach house, as she'd always called it, was now mine. Her carefully curated, minimalist decor was still there, but it felt hollow, devoid of warmth. I walked through the rooms, the echoes of their greed still clinging to the walls. The first thing I did was find a small, ornate wooden box. I placed it on the mantel in the living room, a place of prominence. On it, I carefully affixed a label, 41 cents. It was a quiet, private monument to the injustice, a constant reminder of what they had tried to do. Later that evening, after the movers had left and the last box was unpacked, I found myself alone on the deck, watching the sunset paint the sky in fiery hues. The ocean breeze was cool against my skin. The house was finally quiet. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the news articles. Camilla and Freya's mugshots were everywhere. The comments sections were brutal. There was no defending them, not anymore. I walked back inside to the mantel and touched the small wooden box. "This wasn't revenge, Grandma," I whispered into the silent house, my voice thick with an emotion I rarely allowed myself to show. It was a raw, aching vulnerability that only she would have understood. This was respect for you, for your wishes, for the truth. A single tear traced a path down my cheek, quickly wiped away. It wasn't a tear of sadness or even anger, but of release. The burden of being the forgettable one, the black sheep, had finally lifted. I had honored her. The next morning, the mail arrived. Among the usual bills and junk mail, there was a plain white envelope, no return address. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note, elegant and precise, a stark contrast to the crude forgery. "You really think she loved you most?" it read. It was postmarked from Sienna's usual stomping grounds. My cousin, Sienna Butler, 35, the superficial socialite who had tried to bury the media leak and then withdrawn her claim to save face. She wasn't done, not by a long shot. I smiled. Game not over, not yet. The legal dust settled, but the tremors continued. The court's ruling meant all of Grandma Emery's assets, from the sprawling family estate to every last stock certificate, were officially mine. Camilla and Freya were out on bail, awaiting trial for fraud and forgery, their public humiliation complete. One of the first things I did, once the legal transfer was finalized, was gain access to Grandma's personal safe at the bank. Inside, nestled amongst old deeds and a few pieces of antique jewelry, were her journals, dozens of them meticulously filled, spanning decades. I took them back to the beach house, the one Freya had always claimed as hers. The box labeled 41 cents sat prominently on the mantel, a quiet sentinel. I spent days reading, absorbing Grandma's life, her observations, her sharp, often biting wit. She wrote about her early struggles, her triumphs, and, chillingly, about her family. She detailed their escalating greed, their petty jealousies, their constant maneuvering for her favor. She saw it all, every calculated smile, every feigned affection. One line, scrawled fiercely on a page from a few years back, stopped me cold. The one who fights is worth the fortune. The rest are just vultures. It wasn't just about money for her, it was a test, a final grand challenge to see who truly deserved what she had built. Sienna's anonymous letter, "You really think she loved you most?" sat on my kitchen counter. It didn't surprise me. Sienna, 35, was a creature of reputation, and mine, though born of scandal, was now undeniably powerful. She couldn't stand it. I knew she'd keep trying to stir the pot, but I had no intention of engaging in a public catfight. My battles were fought on different terms now. The beach house, formerly Freya's, was the first asset I addressed. It was beautiful, but it felt tainted by their avarice. It wasn't a home for me. I quietly initiated the process of turning it over to a local nonprofit that ran a women's shelter, providing safe housing for survivors of domestic abuse. The irony wasn't lost on me. A place built on greed, now a sanctuary. Freya, I imagined, would be apoplectic. This was my version of burning this house down. The sprawling O'Brien family estate, a place I'd rarely visited due to my mother's coldness and my cousin's snobbery, was next. It was a magnificent property, rich in history, but also in the kind of familial toxicity Grandma had railed against. I decided to place it under a conservation trust, ensuring its preservation for public access and environmental protection. No more private, exclusive parties for the O'Briens. My revenge was served, yes, but it didn't mean I needed to rot in it. I wasn't going to become another greedy O'Brien. My purpose was different. I also launched a new legal initiative, leveraging my newfound resources and Nick's expertise. It wasn't just for me. It was for Grandma and for every other vulnerable senior out there. I established the 41-cent Trust for Exploited Seniors, a fund dedicated to providing legal aid for elderly individuals whose wills or assets had been fraudulently manipulated by greedy family members or caregivers. The name was deliberate, a permanent public reminder of the humiliation they'd tried to inflict. And as a first order of business, the trust filed a separate lawsuit against Camilla and Freya for defamation and emotional damages. It wasn't about the money for me, but about setting a precedent, about ensuring their actions had consequences beyond the criminal charges. I remained publicly quiet through it all. The media, of course, went wild with the news of the trust and the new lawsuit. Callie O'Brien turns 41 cents into $1 million crusade, one headline read. The story went viral on its own, a testament to the public's appetite for karma. I sat on the deck of my beach house, the one I was about to give away, sipping a glass of wine as the sun dipped below the horizon. The ocean air was crisp, the sound of the waves a soothing rhythm. My phone, which I rarely checked for family updates anymore, buzzed with a news alert. It was a photo of Camilla and Freya, leaving the courthouse after a pre-trial hearing, looking haggard and defeated. Sienna was likely still trying to spin her way out of the public eye, but the O'Brien name was now synonymous with greed and fraud. I reached into my pocket, pulling out a single shiny coin, 41 cents. I flipped it high into the air. It spun, catching the last rays of sunlight before landing squarely in my palm. Heads. The scent of lilies and stale grief clung to me like a shroud. I stared at the closed pine box, the cheapest one they had, and whispered, "I'm so sorry, Leo." My voice cracked on his name. Leo Welch, My husband. Gone at 33, just 2 years older than my own 31. It felt like a lifetime ago that we'd laughed in our tiny apartment, planning a future that now lay buried with him. The funeral director, a man with a perpetually sympathetic frown, cleared his throat. Mrs. Welch? We're ready to finalize the arrangements. Every head in the small chapel turned to me. Leo's mother, Mary, a woman of 62 whose face was a roadmap of disapproval, fixed me with a stare that could curdle milk. She always looked at me like I was a stain on her pristine carpet, even when Leo was alive. Her son, Logan, 35, Leo's older brother, and the self-appointed patriarch of their dwindling fortune, stood beside her, his arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips. His wife, Olivia, 34, was beside him, clutching a designer handbag like a shield. Haley, Leo's younger sister, 28, and perpetually glued to her phone, barely looked up. "Payment, Mrs. Welch?" the director prompted again, his voice softer this time, sensing the tension. My throat was dry. I had a wad of crumpled bills in my pocket. $12. That was it. $12 to my name after everything. After the hospital bills, after the lost wages, after trying to keep our heads above water. Leo had been the steady earner, the one who kept our little world spinning. Without him, it had all unraveled, faster than a cheap sweater. Mary stepped forward, her voice cutting through the hushed chapel like a razor. "Honestly, Cameron, it's a shame. You should have married someone with more foresight, someone richer perhaps, who could actually afford to bury their husband properly." Logan let out a low chuckle, a sound that grated on my raw nerves. Haley finally looked up, a flicker of something that might have been pity or maybe just mild amusement in her eyes. The humiliation burned, a hot, searing flush that started in my chest and spread to my face. My own parents, who were sitting in the second row, offered no defense. My mother, 58, wrung her hands. My father, 60, stared at the floor. Later, they'd pull me aside, offering their usual brand of support. "It's time you came home, Cameron," my mom would say, her voice dripping with pity. "Start over. We'll help you get back on your feet." "You need stability," my dad would add, as if I hadn't been stable with Leo, as if my life hadn't been perfectly fine until it shattered. I didn't need their pity. I didn't need their criticism. I needed Leo, and he was gone. I looked at the director, then back at Mary, her face a mask of smug satisfaction. "I'll handle it," I said, my voice barely a whisper, but firm. I didn't say how. I couldn't. I turned on my heel, ignoring the whispers, the stares, the judgment. My backpack, heavy with the few clothes I owned, felt like a lead weight on my shoulders. I walked out of that chapel, past the wilting lilies, past the empty promises of comfort, and into the harsh afternoon sun. My Honda Civic, a beat-up relic Leo had lovingly maintained, sat baking in the parking lot. The engine coughed to life, protesting, but it started. I put it in drive, not looking back. Not at the chapel, not at the people who had just buried the kindest man I knew, and then buried me with him. I drove until the city lights blurred into a distant glow. I drove until the gaslight flickered on. I pulled into the back corner of an Exxon station, the hum of the refrigerators inside the convenience store a low thrum against the silence of my despair. I reclined the seat, pulling my worn jacket tighter around me. The $12 felt like a curse in my pocket. I slept in that car, behind an Exxon station, the smell of exhaust and cheap coffee filling the night air. And as the first hint of dawn painted the sky, I swore on Leo's name I'd never need them again. Not his family, not mine. Not anyone. The $12 lasted exactly 2 days. 2 days of gas station coffee and the cheapest instant noodles I could find. After that, the Honda became my entire world. My home, my office, my sanctuary. I parked in different spots each night. Walmart parking lots, quiet residential streets, sometimes even just a dark stretch of road near a closed business. Always with one eye open, always with a knot of fear in my stomach. My days became a routine born of necessity. Mornings, I'd drive to a public library. They had free Wi-Fi, warm bathrooms, and a quiet corner where I could blend in. I'd spend hours there, hunched over my ancient laptop, the one Leo had bought me for my last birthday. I wasn't looking for jobs, not at first. I was just trying to distract myself, to escape the crushing weight of grief and humiliation. One afternoon, I stumbled onto a YouTube channel. It was some guy, probably in his early 20s, meticulously disassembling a smartphone. He talked about logic boards, capacitors, and micro-soldering with an almost religious fervor. I watched, mesmerized. It was like watching a surgeon or an artist. Something clicked. I'd always been good with my hands, always enjoyed taking things apart to see how they worked. Leo used to joke I had X-ray vision for electronics. I started watching more videos, laptop repairs, tablet fixes, even obscure console modifications. I'd pick up discarded electronics from dumpsters behind repair shops, or sometimes just off the side of the road. Old, broken phones, cracked tablets. I'd bring them back to my car, use a cheap toolkit I bought with my last few dollars, and try to replicate what I saw online. My fingers, surprisingly steady, learned the delicate dance of tiny screws and ribbon cables. I was a natural. The focus it required, the intricate problem-solving, it was the only time my mind wasn't consumed by Leo, or Mary's sneer, or the hollow ache in my chest. A month bled into 2. I was still living in the Honda, still showering at truck stops, or the occasional gym day pass I splurged on. But now I was good, really good. I could diagnose a dead motherboard just by looking at the schematics online. I could replace a charging port blindfolded. I started lurking in obscure online forums, places where people talked about custom builds, data recovery, and repairs that big box stores wouldn't touch. My handle was Cameron R, innocuous enough. I'd offer advice, sometimes even solve complex problems for strangers, just for the challenge. One evening, a private message popped up from a user named Byte King. "Hey Cameron R," it read. "Saw your posts on the Deadboard Revival thread. You seem to know your stuff. Got a job for you, if you're interested. High risk, high reward. Cash." I hesitated. This was different. This was real money. I was still 31, still living out of my car, and winter was coming. I needed this. "Details?" I typed back. Byte King, who later introduced himself as Brian Carter, 38, was an online tech dealer. He bought and sold rare components, salvaged parts, and sometimes entire systems. He was gruff, no nonsense, but he seemed to have a strange code of honor. He sent me a photo of a phone motherboard. It looked like it had been run over by a truck, then set on fire. "Client dropped it in a river, then tried to dry it in an oven," Brian explained in a follow-up message. "Data recovery is critical. No one else will touch it. Think you can do it?" I stared at the image. It was a mess. But I saw a path, a tiny, almost invisible path through the charred circuitry. "Send it," I replied. He shipped it to a P.O. box I'd rented. I worked on that board for 3 days straight, fueled by cheap coffee and a burning need to prove myself. My Honda became a makeshift lab, my headlamp illuminating the tiny components as I painstakingly cleaned, resoldered, and rebuilt. When I finally hooked it up to my testing rig, the data flickered to life. Success, my first real win. Brian paid me more than I'd seen in months. Enough for a proper meal, a full tank of gas, and a few more tools. He was impressed. "You're good, Cameron R." "Really good. Ever thought about going pro?" Anonymously, of course. "There's a market for ghosts like you." That's how Vexa was born. I created a new online identity, a new persona. No photos, no personal details. Just a reputation for being the best. The one who could fix anything. recover anything, bypass anything. Vexer became known in the dark corners of the internet, a whisper among those who needed things done quietly, efficiently, and without questions. My skills grew, my confidence soared. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was building something. One night, scrolling through a secure forum where Vexer was gaining serious traction, I saw a new thread. Project Red Tears. It was a request for a highly skilled, untraceable tech expert to analyze and potentially disable a corrupted surveillance system. The post was vague, but one detail caught my eye. It mentioned a colonial estate recently sold. My blood ran cold. The Welch home. It couldn't be a coincidence, could it? Months turned into a blur of late nights and early mornings. It had been almost 6 months since Leo's funeral. I was still living in my Honda, but it wasn't out of desperation anymore. It was a choice. Every dollar Vexer earned, and Vexer was earning a lot, went into a separate account. I was building a war chest, a quiet digital fortress of funds. My Honda was just a temporary base of operations, a mobile command center. I'd park it in quiet, unassuming neighborhoods, blend in, and work. My skills as Vexer had exploded. Brian, 38, my first real contact in this underground world, had become an invaluable mentor. He'd send me the impossible jobs, the ones no one else could touch, untraceable data wipes, ghost network setups, forensic recovery from devices that had been through hell and back. My reputation grew, whispered in encrypted chats and dark web forums. Vexer was the one you called when you needed something done that couldn't be traced, couldn't be undone. The Project Red Tears request from the secure forum had gnawed at me. A corrupted surveillance system, a colonial estate. It was too specific, too close to home. I took the job not for the money, but for the information. The client was anonymous, only communicating through encrypted channels, but their request was clear. Analyze the system, find its vulnerabilities, and if possible, find out who installed it and why it was failing. As Vexer, I started digging. My initial research into the surveillance system led me down a rabbit hole of property records and public filings. That's when I saw it. The address. The Welch family's colonial home. The same house where Mary had hosted countless condescending family dinners. The same house where Logan, 35, had once told Leo, 33, he was punching above his weight, marrying me. And then, the bombshell, the house was listed for sale. Not just listed, but marked urgent sale, cash buyers preferred. My fingers flew across the keyboard. This wasn't just a coincidence, it was a sign. I dug deeper, using every trick Vexer had learned. Public records, obscure financial databases, even some old social media profiles I knew Logan, 35, and Olivia, 34, had used. It wasn't hard to piece together. Logan, the arrogant financial guru of the Welch family, had made a disastrous crypto investment. He'd leveraged their family trust, the one Mary, 62, guarded like a dragon, and it had imploded. The house, their prized possession, was the collateral. A cold, hard resolve settled in my gut. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about something else, something I hadn't dared to name. I needed more information, local intel that even Vexer's digital prowess couldn't easily access. That's when I thought of Kyson Lee, 29. He was the only friend who'd stuck by me through my early 20s, before Leo. He worked in local government, something with city planning and permits. He was always in the know about local happenings, especially property. It took me a few days to work up the courage to reach out. I sent him a message on an old, rarely used social media account, careful not to reveal my current situation. Hey Kyson, long time. Random question, you still in the loop on city property auctions? His reply came surprisingly fast. Cam? Wow. Yeah, still am. Why? You looking to buy a fixer-upper? I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Something like that. Need some info on how the process works, maybe some upcoming listings. He was curious, but loyal. He didn't ask too many questions, just offered to meet for coffee. I declined, citing a busy schedule, and asked him to just email me anything he found. He sent me links to city auction sites, tips on how to navigate the bidding process, and even a few off-market listings. He had no idea what he was helping me with. My confidence, once shattered, was now a sharp, gleaming edge. The obsession grew, a quiet hum beneath my skin. I wasn't just fixing electronics anymore. I was fixing my life. And I was going to do it by dismantling theirs. The open house for the Welch estate was on a Saturday afternoon. I'd spent weeks preparing. My hair, once a dull brown, was now a sleek, dark auburn, a wig I'd bought with cash from a beauty supply store miles away. I wore a tailored blazer and slacks, a sharp, professional look that screamed investor, not widow living in a Honda. I even had a set of fake business cards with a generic company name and a burner phone number. I walked into the grand foyer of the Welch home, the scent of lemon polish and old money thick in the air. It was exactly as I remembered it. Every ornate detail a reminder of the life Leo had tried to bridge between us and his family. Mary, 62, stood by the fireplace, talking to a real estate agent, her face etched with a familiar, weary disdain. Logan, 35, was on his phone, looking bored. Haley, 28, was nowhere in sight. I moved through the house, nodding politely at other potential buyers, my eyes scanning every corner. The surveillance system I'd been researching as Vexor, Project Red Tears, was humming quietly in the background, its cameras discreetly placed. It was all real. This was it. As I approached Mary and the agent, she looked up, her eyes sweeping over me without a flicker of recognition. I was a stranger, just another potential buyer. "We're looking for serious offers," Mary announced, her voice tight with a desperation she tried to hide. "Cash buyers only, ideally. We need to close quickly." I met her gaze, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. "Perfect," I replied, my voice calm, steady, and utterly unrecognizable. The closing was surprisingly swift, almost clinical. I sat across from Mary, 62, and Logan, 35, in a sterile conference room at the title company. They didn't look at me, not really. They looked through me, seeing only the large sum of money I was about to transfer. They were desperate, and I was their solution. I was still 31, but the woman who walked into that room was a world away from the broken widow who had left Leo's funeral with $12. I had used a shell corporation, set up meticulously by Brian, 38, to handle the transaction. It was completely untraceable back to me. The funds were clean, earned through months of Vex's high-stakes, high-reward work. Every single dollar was a testament to my grit, to the transformation I'd undergone. Mary signed the papers with a flourish, a tight, almost triumphant smile on her lips. Logan, ever the businessman, watched the digital transfer on his phone, his eyes widening slightly as the numbers confirmed the incoming funds. They thought they were getting out of a bind, getting a fresh start. They had no idea they were signing their own eviction notice. "Pleasure doing business with you, Ms." "Smith," Mary said, extending a hand. I shook it, her grip surprisingly weak. My fake name, Sarah Smith, felt like a shield. "Likewise," I replied, my voice calm, betraying nothing. I walked out of that office building feeling a strange mix of exhilaration and emptiness. The house was mine. The very place where I had been humiliated, where Leo, 33, had tried so hard to make me feel accepted by his family, was now under my control. It was a victory, but it felt cold, precise. Not the catharsis I might have expected. Weeks later, I sat in a small, unassuming cafe across the street from the Welch home. My Honda was parked a few blocks away, out of sight. I had on a simple baseball cap and sunglasses, just another face in the crowd. The eviction notice had been served a week prior, delivered by a process server who had no idea the new owner was watching from afar. The moving truck pulled up just after 9 a.m. It was an old, beat-up thing, a stark contrast to the pristine colonial Mary, 62, had always maintained. I watched as two burly movers began to carry out boxes. First, a stack of framed family photos, then a large ornate mirror, then a box clearly labeled China. Mary's prized decade-old china, the set she'd always boasted about. The one she'd once told me was too delicate for clumsy hands. I sipped my lukewarm coffee, a faint smile touching my lips. This was it. The first tangible consequence. Mary, Logan, 35, and Olivia, 34, were there, directing the movers, their faces a mixture of frustration and disbelief. Logan was on his phone, probably yelling at someone. Olivia looked stressed, her usually perfect hair slightly disheveled. Haley, 28, was nowhere to be seen, which wasn't surprising. She was always good at disappearing when things got messy. I watched them, a detached observer. There was no grand confrontation, no dramatic reveal. Just the quiet, methodical removal of their possessions from a home that was no longer theirs. It was a silent takedown, exactly as I had planned. The power dynamic had shifted irrevocably. They had no idea who Sarah Smith was, no idea that the woman who had bought their house for cash was the same woman they had left to bury her husband with $12. A pang of something, not guilt, but a deep, complex ache, twisted in my stomach. Would Leo have wanted this? Would he have approved of this cold, calculated revenge? He was a kind man, a gentle soul. He wouldn't have wished this on anyone. But then, he hadn't been there when his mother mocked me, when his brother chuckled, when my own family offered only pity. He hadn't been there to see me sleep in my car, to feel the gnawing hunger, the crushing loneliness. This wasn't just about the house. It was about reclaiming something they had taken from me, my dignity. As the movers loaded the last box of china, Mary stumbled slightly, catching herself on the doorframe. She looked around, her eyes lingering on the empty windows, the stripped bare porch. For a fleeting moment, I saw something in her eyes that wasn't anger or disdain, but genuine loss. It was a flicker, gone as quickly as it appeared. I finished my coffee, the taste bitter on my tongue. The revenge was taking shape, a slow, methodical unraveling. This was just the beginning. Later that night, as I was parked in a quiet cul-de-sac reviewing my Vexer notes, my burner phone buzzed. It was an unfamiliar number. I hesitated, then answered. Silence. Then a text message came through, just one word. You? My blood ran cold. The number wasn't in my contacts. It was from Haley, 28. How? How could she possibly know? The deed was in the Shell Corporation's name. I had been so careful. I stared at the single word, my heart pounding. She had found something. She had seen something. This wasn't just a silent takedown anymore. This was a direct hit. The single word, you, burned on my phone screen. Haley. How? I hadn't used my real name anywhere, not even on the burner phone. The Shell Corporation was watertight. My mind raced, replaying every step of the purchase, every interaction. I didn't reply. Instead, I immediately sent a message to Brian, 38. Need you to run a deep dive on a phone number. See if it's connected to anyone in the Welch family, and check for any digital footprints related to the sale of the house. Brian's response was quick. On it. Give me an hour. While I waited, I started drilling deeper into the Welch family's digital footprint, focusing on the house itself. As Vexer, I'd already analyzed the Project Red Tears surveillance system that had been installed there. It was a high-end, custom setup designed for serious security. But it had strange redundancies, odd blind spots. Now, with the house under my control, I had direct access. I connected to the system remotely, bypassing its security protocols with ease. What I found was a goldmine. Not just surveillance logs, but old tax records that had been digitally stored on the system's server, intermingled with maintenance reports and security overruns. Logan, 35, had been sloppy. He'd used the house's server as a catch-all for everything, probably thinking it was secure enough. I started sifting through the files, my fingers flying across the keyboard. The surveillance logs were extensive, showing every entry and exit, every movement within the house. But it was the maintenance reports that caught my eye, specifically a series of reports from the factory where Leo, 33, had worked. They detailed a history of failed safety protocols, ignored warnings, and a pattern of cutting corners on equipment maintenance. The dates of these reports were chillingly close to Leo's accident. My stomach clenched. Leo had been a blue-collar worker, a good man who believed in doing things by the book. He'd complained sometimes about the safety standards at the plant, but he'd never gone into detail. Now I was seeing why. The reports painted a picture of systemic negligence. And Logan, as the family's financial overseer, had been the one signing off on the budget cuts that led to these ignored protocols. It wasn't just an accident, it was a cover-up. Then I found it, a digital copy of a life insurance policy taken out on Leo Welch, the policyholder, Mary Welch, 62. The amount was substantial, and the date it was taken out? 1 week before Leo's accident. Suspicion, cold and sharp, took root in my mind. This wasn't just about humiliation anymore. This was about something far darker. My rage, which had been a slow burn, now flared into a roaring inferno. It wasn't just Logan's arrogance or Mary's cruelty. It was their potential complicity in Leo's death. Brian's message came through. Haley Welch. Her phone number is linked to an old family account that had access to the digital log for the property deed. Looks like she found a backdoor into the public record system. Smart kid. Haley. Of course. She was always the quiet one, the one everyone underestimated. She must have seen my actual name on the deed's digital log before the Shell Corporation fully obscured it, or maybe she had some obscure tech trick of her own. She was 28, young enough to be digitally savvy. I still didn't reply to her text. My focus had shifted. The revenge was no longer just about humiliation. It was about justice. Leo's justice. I continued digging, fueled by a grim determination. The Project Red Tears system, which I now knew was the Welch family's own security, became my primary target. I found more than just financial documents. I found communication logs, encrypted messages between Logan and Mary, discussing loose ends and managing the narrative after Leo's death. They were vague, but ominous. Then a redacted medical report. Leo's name was on it, but the details were obscured. As Vexer, I knew how to unredact. It took time, meticulous effort, but I broke through the digital redaction. The report confirmed Leo had been alive for 10 hours post-accident. 10 hours. But he hadn't been transferred to a better hospital, a specialist facility that might have saved him. The report noted a family decision to keep him at the local under-equipped hospital. My breath hitched. They had let him die. Not directly, maybe, but they had made a choice that sealed his fate. The insurance policy, the negligence at the plant, the refusal to transfer him. It all clicked into place, a horrifying mosaic of betrayal. My rage wasn't morally murky anymore. It was crystal clear. This wasn't just revenge, this was an investigative crusade. and they were going to pay for every single minute of those 10 hours. The rage was a cold, steady fire in my veins. It had been nearly 2 years since Leo's funeral. I was 33 now, older, harder, and infinitely more dangerous than the woman who'd left that chapel with $12. The Honda was long gone, traded for a nondescript SUV parked in the garage of a small rented house miles from the Welch estate. My life was still off the grid, but now it was by design, not necessity. I spent days, then weeks, meticulously planning my next moves. The information I'd uncovered about Logan's financial mismanagement and the horrifying details surrounding Leo's death had transformed my revenge from a personal vendetta into a full-blown mission for justice. Brian, I typed into our encrypted chat, I need to get inside Welch Industries' server. Deep access, unseen. Brian, 38, didn't ask why. He rarely did anymore. He just sent a series of complex instructions, a digital skeleton key to their corporate network. It's a one-shot deal, Vexer, he warned. Their firewalls are decent. You get in, you get out. No lingering. I spent another week preparing. I simulated the infiltration dozens of times, mapping out every pathway, every potential trap. When I finally made the move, it was late at night, the city silent around me. My fingers danced across the keyboard, a blur of motion and intent. I bypassed their initial defenses, slipped through their secondary firewalls, and burrowed deep into the heart of their system. What I found was worse than I imagined. Logan, 35, hadn't just made a disastrous crypto investment. He'd been siphoning funds from Welch Industries, using the company as his personal piggy bank, funneling money into shell accounts and offshore ventures. The family trust, which he managed, was practically empty. He'd been bleeding the company dry for years, all while maintaining the facade of a shrewd financial mind. I didn't just leak the information, I packaged it. I compiled a comprehensive dossier of evidence, transaction logs, internal memos, manipulated balance sheets. Then I sent it anonymously to the relevant financial regulators, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and the state's Attorney General's office. I made sure to include just enough detail to trigger an immediate, undeniable investigation. The fallout was swift and brutal. Within days, news broke. Welch Industries under investigation for financial misconduct. The headlines were everywhere. Logan was being investigated, his assets frozen, his reputation in tatters. Mary's personal bank account, which was tied to some of Logan's illicit transfers, was also frozen. Mary, 62, the woman who had mocked my poverty, was now facing financial ruin herself. Olivia, 34, Logan's wife, was a social climber who thrived on appearances. This public scandal was her worst nightmare. I could almost hear her panic from miles away. And then, the perfect, unintended consequence. Olivia, desperate and distraught, called the one person she thought she could trust for a sympathetic ear. Jolie Arnold, 32, my estranged cousin. Olivia didn't know that Jolie, beneath her influencer facade, was a notorious gossip, a human leak who thrived on family drama and often fed anonymous tips to local tabloids and online gossip blogs. Jolie, who had offered me nothing but fake sympathy and then probably dissected my misery with her followers. I didn't have to do anything. Olivia's panicked phone call, full of accusations against Logan, details of their financial woes, and the sheer terror of losing her social standing, was exactly the kind of juicy material Jolie lived for. The scandal spread like wildfire, amplified by Jolie's anonymous posts and carefully curated sources. The Welch family's fall from grace became front-page news, a cautionary tale for the city's elite. Watching it unfold, I felt a strange mix of triumph and unease. My revenge was touching a sharp edge. I was simultaneously thrilled by the precision of my takedown and terrified by what I was becoming. The line between justice and vengeance blurred with every click of my keyboard. Was this what Leo would have wanted? Or was I just a monster, consumed by my own pain? Then another text from Haley, 28, on the burner phone. You're destroying them. Why? I ignored it. My focus was on the next phase. Early the next morning, I saw it. A new post on Jolie's most popular gossip blog. It was a quote attributed to an anonymous source close to the family. They didn't bury Leo, they buried the truth. It was viral before sunrise. My words, delivered through my estranged cousin, echoing across the digital landscape. The truth about Leo's death, the whispers of foul play, were now out there, planted like a seed in the public consciousness. The ground was shifting, and the Welch family was about to be buried under the weight of their own lies. The viral quote, "They didn't bury Leo, they buried the truth," had set the city ablaze. The financial scandal at Welch Industries was now intertwined with whispers of a cover-up surrounding Leo's death. The media, fueled by Jolie's 32 anonymous tips and the sudden interest from regulators, was relentless. It was time for the final act. I had moved back into the Welch house a few days prior. Not as Sarah Smith, the anonymous investor, but as Cameron Rogers, 33, the rightful owner. The house, once a symbol of their power and my humiliation, was now my stage. I'd left it mostly empty, a stark, echoing shell, perfect for what was coming. The confrontation happened on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the living room setting up a small portable projector. The front door burst open, and Mary, 62, stormed in, her face a mask of fury and desperation. Logan, 35, followed, his usual arrogance replaced by a frantic edge. Olivia, 34, hovered behind them, looking utterly bewildered and terrified. Haley, 28, was there too, her eyes darting around the empty space, then landing on me. "Cameron!" Mary shrieked, her voice cracking. "What is the meaning of this? What have you done?" I turned, a calm smile on my face. "Hello, Mary, Logan, Olivia, Haley." My voice was even, devoid of the raw emotion I felt churning inside. "Welcome back to your old home, or rather, my home now." Logan stepped forward, his fists clenched. "You bought this house? You? How? You were broke. You couldn't even pay for Leo's funeral." Yes," I said, walking slowly towards the grand staircase, the very one I'd imagined them descending in their finery. The funeral, a truly memorable day, especially Mary's insightful comment about marrying richer. I looked directly at Mary and Logan's little chuckle. Mary gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. You were there?" "Oh, I was there," I confirmed, reaching the bottom of the stairs. "With precisely $12 in my wallet, the same $12 you all watched me walk away with." I paused, letting the silence hang heavy. "Funny, isn't it? How karma works." "This is insane," Logan roared. "You're ruining us. The company, my reputation, our accounts are frozen." "Your accounts are frozen because you were siphoning funds, Logan," I said, my voice cutting through his bluster. "From Welch Industries, from the family trust. I have the receipts. The regulators have the receipts." His face went pale. Olivia whimpered, clutching Logan's arm. "And Mary," I continued, turning my gaze back to her. "That life insurance policy you took out on Leo, 33, a week before his accident? That was a curious coincidence, wasn't it?" Mary stumbled back, leaning against Logan. "That's a lie. It was a standard policy." "Was it?" I challenged, pulling out my phone. "Because the redacted medical report tells a different story. The one that says Leo was alive for 10 hours after the accident. 10 hours, Mary. And you, as next of kin, refused to transfer him to a specialist hospital. You let him die in that under-equipped facility. Why, Mary?" Was it to ensure that standard policy paid out? The air in the room crackled with tension. Mary looked like she'd seen a ghost. Logan stared at me, his eyes wide with dawning horror. Then Haley, 28, stepped forward, her voice small, barely a whisper. "She's telling the truth." Everyone turned to her. Mary looked betrayed. Logan looked furious. Haley's eyes, red-rimmed, met mine. I knew. I saw the policy. I saw the emails about the hospital. I wanted to tell you, Cameron, after the funeral, but Logan threatened me. He said he'd cut me off, that I'd be alone. He said no one would believe me anyway. Tears streamed down her face. "I'm so sorry, Cam." A wave of unexpected emotion washed over me. Haley, the cynical, spoiled sister, showing genuine remorse. It was a crack in the facade I hadn't anticipated. Just then, my phone buzzed. Brian, 38, a final file. I opened it, my eyes scanning the document. A hidden family inheritance. Left by Leo's great aunt years ago, but never claimed. It had been siphoned by Logan, buried in obscure accounts, just like everything else. And now, thanks to Brian's relentless digging, it was uncovered. And I, as Leo's legal widow, was the sole beneficiary. Not Mary, not Logan, not Haley, me. The power dynamic had flipped completely. I wasn't just the owner of their former home. I was the inheritor of their hidden wealth, the keeper of their darkest secrets. I looked at Mary, her face ashen, at Logan, defeated, at Olivia, terrified, and at Haley, finally broken by the truth. "Don't worry," I said, my voice calm, almost gentle, as I pulled a key card from my pocket. It was for a motel room, a cheap one, just a few blocks away. I walked over to Mary and pressed it into her trembling hand. "It's paid for 2 nights. After that, I'm sure you can ask someone with more than $12. I watched as the realization dawned on her face. The $12, the ultimate insult, returned with devastating precision. The silence in the room was deafening, filled only by Olivia's quiet sobs and Haley's ragged breathing. My vengeance was complete, bold, unwavering, and utterly, chillingly cold. The silence in the grand, empty house was deafening after they left. Mary, 62, had snatched the motel key, her face a mask of utter defeat and fury. Logan, 35, had dragged Olivia, 34, out, muttering threats I knew he couldn't follow through on. Haley, 28, had lingered for a moment, her eyes still red, a silent plea in them, before she too turned and walked out. The air still hummed with the echoes of shattered lives, but it was their lives, not mine. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, though I mostly remained in the background. The financial regulators, armed with the evidence I'd provided as vexer, moved swiftly against Logan. Welch Industries was in freefall. The media, still buzzing from Jolie's 32 viral quote, dug deeper into Leo's 33 accident, connecting the dots between Logan's budget cuts, the ignored safety protocols, and the suspicious life insurance policy Mary had taken out. There was no direct evidence to charge them with murder, but the public narrative, fueled by the leaked reports and the sheer weight of their financial crimes, was damning enough. Their reputations, their social standing, their entire world crumbled. The family payout hearing for Leo's estate was a formality. I didn't attend. I didn't need to see their faces again, not in a courtroom. Brian, 38, handled everything, representing my interests through the Shell Corporation. When the dust settled, I was granted custody of Leo's name, his intellectual property, and surprisingly, the rights to a small tech prototype he'd been tinkering with in his spare time, a smart home security system he'd envisioned. He'd never told me about the inheritance, but Brian's meticulous work had found it. buried deep in Logan's fraudulent accounts. It was a substantial sum, enough to ensure I'd never again have to count $12 in my pocket. A few months later, I found myself standing before Leo's grave. The plain pine casket was long buried, replaced by a simple, unadorned headstone. The lilies were gone, replaced by wild grass. I wasn't there out of guilt, not anymore. The revenge had brought justice, a cold, precise retribution. But it hadn't healed the hole Leo left behind. It had merely filled it with something else, a grim satisfaction, a sense of balance restored. I missed him. I always would. But the suffocating shame, the desperate fear of being broke and alone, that was gone. The Welch house, my house now, was no longer an empty shell. It was a work in progress, a buzzing hub of activity. I hadn't wanted to live in it. It held too many ghosts, too many bitter memories. Instead, I had transformed it. With the inheritance and the steady income from Vexa, I established a nonprofit. The colonial estate, once a symbol of elitism and cruelty, was now a shelter for young women from disadvantaged backgrounds, a place where they could learn tech trades, digital repair, coding, cybersecurity, the very skills that had saved me. I taught some of the classes myself, not as Cameron Rogers, but as a mentor, a guide. The irony wasn't lost on me. The house that had seen my lowest point was now fostering the future of others. Vexa still existed, a phantom in the digital underworld, taking on the jobs that needed untraceable expertise. But it wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the challenge, about proving that knowledge was power, and that power could be wielded for good or for precise, calculated consequence. One quiet evening, sitting in the small office I'd set up in the house, I logged onto the same obscure message board where Vexa was born. I typed out a final message, not a job offer, not a solution, but a statement, cryptic, free, and utterly mine. The digital bones always tell a story. You just have to know how to listen, and sometimes the loudest truths are whispered by the quietest hands. I hit enter. It went viral before sunrise, shared and dissected by the anonymous community that had once feared and respected Vexa. They didn't know it was me, Cameron Rogers, the widow who had been left with nothing. But they knew the message. They understood the power of the unseen, the untraceable. I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the sprawling, manicured lawn of the house that had once belonged to the Welches. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The house stood solid, no longer a monument to their pride, but a testament to my resilience. Funny how karma always costs exactly what you stole from someone else, sometimes down to the dollar.